Very good afternoon to everyone present here. Now we will be having a panel discussion. The topic for the discussion would be, can digital accelerate our journey to net zero? With us, we have four panelists, and I take eminent pleasure in introducing each one of them. Ms. Neha Parekh. Neha Parekh is currently heading logistics and customer service at Godrej Consumer Products Limited. Neha is a competent supply chain professional with over 12 years of experience across business analytics, supply chain optimization, demand planning, inventory planning, supply planning, sales forecasting, and supply network analytics. She is also a seasoned planning professional with dexterity in identifying and adopting emerging trends using data to achieve organizational objectives and profitability norms. Neha's previous experience includes project management, process excellence, NPD, and portfolio management, with key accountability in project budgeting. Next with us, we have Mr. Preet Sarowa. Mr. Preet Sarowa has been with TKLL Group since August 2016, initially as an executive assistant to CEO and then as a lead of bought out material procurement function. Preet is currently leading the PSM function at TKLL Group. Prior to this role, he has worked on projects in cement and power, asset securitization, asset-backed financing, Islamic banking, and design trading platforms for oil and gas sector in the European markets. He has a rich experience of working in cross-cultural environments spanning London, UAE, and India. Apart from his professional full-time engagements, he has been part-time guest faculty of Learning Center of Nationalized Bank. Preet not only pursues his interest in reading and astrology, but is also a sought-after trainer in Vastu and numerology. Preet holds a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad and B from REC Durgapur. Next with us, we have Mr. Somnath Chatterjee, the Vice President, Head of Procurement and Logistics at ITC Limited Foods Division. He has 28 years of rich experience in handling key positions at food industry and FMCG giants like Nestle. He specializes in commodities procurement and strategic planning with focus on implementing cost reduction measures. He has a vast experience in logistics, warehouse management, distribution, transportation, and production planning. Somnath is also graduated from Humanities and specialization in tea and coffee tasting from J. Thompson & Co., Kolkata, and Thompson Lawyer in Import of London. He has undergone various management courses on procurement psychology, price risk mitigation. He is also a member of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce and Indian Merchants Chamber. Next with us, we have Mr. Shailin Shukla. He is the Chief Logistics Officer at Picturu LLC, a Mohammed Arab Al Otiaba Group company. Shailin, an alumni of Delhi University and IIM Ahmedabad, is an astute professional with over 30 plus years of experience in logistics, supply chain, and profit center management, vendor management, and ERP systems. Shailin Shukla has worked as a business head of JECL Logistics, Jumbo Electronics for about 9 years. He has earlier worked in senior positions in large Indian companies like Reliance Logistics, Grasim, Vedanta, Modi Group, and MNCs like Brightpoint and TMS in India. Shailin was awarded the winner of SCATA Supply Chain Year Award in 2013, and he's also recently won the Logistics Leader of the Year Award. Along with them, we have Professor Shayan Mukherjee, who would be helping us in coordinating and moderating the session. Thank you, and over to Professor Shayan. First, can you unmute, Professor?
Okay. Can you hear me? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction to the panelists, and good afternoon to one and all. Welcome to the panel discussion on can detail accelerate our journey to net zero. I'm Shayan Mukherjee, and I'll be the moderator of the discussion today. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the XPGDM batch of XLRI for pulling off this wonderful and timely event. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to the panel members Ms. Neha, Mr. Preet, Mr. Somnath, and Mr. Selen. It will be a wonderful experience talking with you. So climate change has been the focus of discussion for quite a time now, right? It has been almost like 3 decades old that we have been talking about climate change. We have heard about the 1992 UN Framework Convention for Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, and most recently in 2015, the Paris Agreement was ratified, where countries have agreed to work towards the goal of keeping the global temperature increase to well below 2 degrees centigrade from the pre-industrial times. Achieving net zero emission at the earliest is thought to be a step in the direction of achieving this goal and slowing down the global warming. So net zero is basically built on the premise that we may not be able to cut down on the CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions completely. It may be economically infeasible to have a zero emission per se, but carbon emissions can be allowed up to a finite level in the atmosphere. Any increase above that level should be balanced out by removing the excess from the atmosphere, thereby having a net zero emission. Hence, there is a lot of dependence on carbon removal technology for achieving this. So this technology is still in a nascent phase, and none of the technological innovations that have yet been able to economically work at scale. So corporates and governments are increasingly announcing their plans of reaching the net zero targets, and being carbon neutral is seen as a good social and corporate practice. Though the transition to net zero should be universal, yet there has been uneven requirements and expectations that has been laid out from different sectors, geographies, and communities. McKinsey in the 2021 report estimates that the transition to net zero may involve a capital spending of approximately $275 trillion by 2050. So just to put that in perspective, it is almost 100 times the present GDP of India. Hence, there is a need for all stakeholders, that is governments, corporates, and communities, to work in unison if you want to achieve this target. Today, through this panel discussion, we'll try to see what corporates and organizations are doing or planning to do to tackle this issue. With this, I once again welcome the panelists and would like to open this discussion with their opening comments. So I'll invite the panelists to open the discussion with the opening comments. So.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, and yes, many congratulations to XLRI for pulling out a timely event. I think it's well placed and hoping to have an interesting discussion in a Sunday afternoon. Net zero has been much talked about topic since past 2 decades, as we rightly said, and it will continue to be. 2050 is a hard deadline that we all, 2050 is the hard deadline that we all are targeting on to, and so far I think only 3 or 4 countries have a path defined where we feel we will touch there. So how are we going to go ahead and put in? So a couple of things I think that are going to be important. One is how much is our buying. While we may go and sign up, but as a country we really have to be committed, and there are countries like Sweden who also shown that growth in GDP also happens. So it's a counterintuitive statement that when you commit to a net zero target, you are going to get your GDP down. I mean, Japan, Korea, and Sweden are 3 countries who proved us other way around. Other is technology will have to play a good role because technology was the one. So over past decades, it is what has caused carbon emissions to come high. I mean, we have seen industrialization, which increased our emission. Now with digitization, we hope that technology will help us reverse that trend. So these are the things that I would want to highlight upon today. It's a tough goal. I would not say by any means it's an easier one, but together, if we all combine, and it's not going to be about country and corporates, it has to be about each and everyone changing the way we live, then we will surely hit that number.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Professor. Thanks, Neha, for your initial comments. Okay, and then Professor, you can't just leave it to the corporates and the industry to take their journey and be net zero by 2050 or whenever that's possible. Academia has to play a major role, not only in terms of organizing these discussions, but the talent that you're nurturing within XLRI and various other institutes of repute. Okay, and then coming back to the topic, can digitalization accelerate a journey to net zero? I don't know, but what we definitely know for sure is without digitalization, we can't even undertake this journey. So that indirectly sort of answers the main topic that without digitalization, we can't be anywhere. And why digitalization is so important? Whatever concepts, theories, dates, Paris 2015, or any other treaty that we might have worked in the world, is all driven by a certain cycle will be pulled out because of certain kind of a simulation supercomputers. So that's where we need to start. The very basic concept of that we need to take the journey, finish the journey by 2050 with a certain target of 2 degrees centigrade temperature is all driven by digitalization. So it is the core. So it is the core and that has to be driven. Now, when we say that we want to be net zero, why is that important? That probably will come during the question hour session. And then what is sustainability? Sustainability can be best understood if we take it as a static definition when we remove the time from that equation of the definition. So I am living sustainably if I am living the same environment I am in today for the next generation. Train my next generation like you are doing there at Jamshedpur to live the same kind of environment for the next generation. Even if we achieve that sustainability, still we have done a big part of whatever we were supposed to do. That's one. Now, not putting anything into the atmosphere or the environment, and hence that also is not sustainable. Reducing what I put into the atmosphere is a little sustainable. Not maintaining this status quo is also not sustainable. Now, why are we saying this? During the COVID, the first initial months, we have seen that because of the lowering of the economic activity, the temperatures went down by about 7.5% of the target. So if we maintain that level for the next 3 decades, that is 2055, we will achieve net zero. But is that something which we can do sustainably? No. 26% reduction due to the COVID on the emission had brought down the GDP of the world, the global GNP, by almost half. So that is also not sustainable. We can take another case. The tech giant who had claimed to be zero emission company since 2007 after being founded in 1998, still they have estimated to be neutral, to be net zero in terms of pulling back whatever carbon emissions they have done in 9 years of their existence prior to that. They will still need about 33 years to be net zero. So, and that's a huge company, and that's a digitalized company. And if we take anybody else as compared to that tech giant, nobody has that kind of infrastructure. So even if we start today, so 33 years from now, immediately takes us way beyond the 2050 target. So that is nowhere achievable as of today. But should we give up hope? No, absolutely not. Because here today, we should redefine digitalization itself. Digitalization should not mean to us something setting up an alarm at 6 a.m., getting up at 6 a.m. on the alarm, and then going to bed again back on alarm. Because there is an intervention, I drive that. When there's a digitalization, a pure digitalization, which can help us be net zero by 2070 or 2075. I'm already saying that we have passed the target of 2050. Digitalization would mean that there should be some sensor which tells me, yeah, gentlemen, you had now exceeded the carbon emission that you need to do for the whole day, depending on your activity, depending on the food you have taken, depending on the waste you have created. So you have to reduce and now go back to the bed, because that's where you have to be neutral. Because a basic estimate says that if I keep this laptop, my Chromebook on for 2 hours, just for 2 hours, and the power that it uses and the heat that it dissipates, to overcome to be net zero for just this event, I'll have to go out and plant 2 trees immediately that should grow out to a height of 6 feet within the next 5 minutes. So that's the investment. So that's the technology we need to have to be net zero. So their challenges are large. The way is simple, but it will take a lot of investment on the assets and planning and digitalization and the total social responsibility. I can't say that I'm responsible if I'm saying that I'm carbon neutral within my own company. As a supply chain professional, which is what the conclave is about, I'll have to see the whole logistic curve, the whole chain, whole supply chain, from where I get the material, who is consuming my material, and how it's getting discarded. So that's the responsibility. Thank you so much.
Hi, can I have a go? So thank you, XLRI, and thank you, Professor Sayan, for giving the introduction remarks. And coming from the logistics and supply chain industry, I am really pained to see that, we are one of the largest contributors, So energy use accounts for almost 83% of the CO2 emission, out of which mobility in terms of, air, sea and land mobility consists of almost 60% of the CO2 emissions. Is it easy to control? No, it isn't. And as Mr. Preet said, that as supply chain and logistics professionals, we need to, ensure that we work on sustainable practices and try and digitize. So shipping industry, the airline industry and the land freight industries, including 3PLs and people in supply chain and logistics, have been taking a lot of steps to reduce this. But to be very honest, coming from the supply chain industry, we all know that, people are not willing to pay extra or go that extra mile to spend extra or, deal with vendors, who have sustainable products. To give you a very small example, here in UAE, we have a distributorship of one of the largest electricity buses that is there in the world. With we have a tie-up with Inlong company in China, which has over 60,000-70,000 electric buses. And these buses run on a highly advanced battery technology based on LTO. And it has it gives a mileage on a single charge of about 500 kilometers, which is phenomenal, which no other electric bus gives. And also through a depot charging system with Hitachi, it has a fast charging system, whereas you can charge the full bus in 20-30 minutes, totally wireless charging. And a depot charging system, you can charge simultaneously 50 buses at a time. So we are in touch with the RTA and various private entities. So while RTA is very happy to introduce or do a trial of buses, but private sector is just not interested. They say, is it cheaper? Is it more cost effective? No, why should I spend more? So all those questions are there, which we in the industry need to answer, if we have to, go to the environment friendly ways and adopt the technology to achieve net zero. Thank you. You need to unmute.
First, can you help Sayan sir to unmute?
Yeah, I don't know what is happening. I'm being muted constantly. So can you please see that no, at least I'm not, the panelists are not muted.
Sure, sir. We'll ensure that.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so yeah, thank you for the opening comments. Mr. Somnath, would you like to give your opening comments on this?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Somnath Chatterjee. I head the supply chain function for ITC's foods business. For some of you, just a quick, my brands will speak. So you may have consumed Ashirwad Atta, Bingo Chips, Sunfeast, and these are our products. So anyway, sustainability has been a credo in ITC long before it became fashionable otherwise. And our previous chairman used to speak about the triple bottom line. And at that point of time, then this was almost 20 years back. And at that point of time, many investors did not even understand what that really meant. So today, I'm going to share a few use cases with the students and the panelists here on what we have been doing in ITC for the last 2 decades on this topic. We believe that sustainability is not only achievable, but it's also great business, right? We are here in business to make money. We are not here to run Mother Teresa's kitchen. It's not a charity. And we believe in doing sustainability and net zero and make money while doing it, right? So I will give a few examples when we speak about it. But just to leave a quick teaser, if you ever come and book a room in one of our ITC hotels, which are the Welcome Group properties, please note that's your stay is completely net zero, right? It is, we are completely carbon neutral. In fact, we are positive, we are water positive, and we are solid waste positive. And how we went around doing that is something I will talk about a little ahead in this panel. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your opening comments. So now let us first of all have a discussion on understanding this net zero emission. Why achieving net zero emission is necessary, and what are the advantages of living in a net zero community? So I would like to have your views on this.
I think in absence of you calling out, we'll maintain the same order. I think like my friend Mr. Preet Sarwa said, right? It's about giving the same environment or a decade that you lived in to your next generation, and you pass it on. And then that's something that we all have to do. ITC is one great example. I work for Godrej, and that's another example. We are 125 years old, but we still maintain. At that point in time, when people did not think of such things, is when Godrej as a group thought of. Even today, 70% of our land mass in rich Mumbai area is given to mangroves, which we're committed that will not ever industrialize. Right. At that point in time, Godrej as a group came up with a thought. Ardashir, who was our founder, thought that people who work for us should have a good work life. And hence, they should have good places. So Godrej continues to have community living, where we built up housing complexes, and we continue to do that even 125 years now, where we built housing complexes for our own people so that they stay very close home. We have direct access. We have a lot of people who come in very different ways. While it sounds quite like a fable, but in Mumbai, yes, we do have some people who can jog, skate, or cycle to office. I am one of them who can do that because of the experiences that we've built in. And yes, it is something that also makes you sustainable, makes you profitable. As a group, we are considered to be I mean, Godrej is synonymous to trust. If you see all our brands, we continue to innovate, we continue to grow. In fact, we've grown in significant sizes across all the group companies, still remain sustainable. So I would say having net zero is nothing but keeping profit and environment side by side, not one besides other. And it's as simply put, I mean, I don't have any better thing, but I'll probably take it from Preet, as he said, it's keeping the same environment that you grew up with for your next generation, and for teaching them to maintain the same for the generations to come. Like we say at Godrej that 4 generations, everybody would at least have 5 Godrej products at their home. We've been relevant at least for 4 generations, and we hope that we'll be relevant for coming 4 generations. So that's something that we need to do for sustainability, and that's how we'll go. And then we'll continue to grow. In fact, your 2 prime examples of ITC and Godrej who have been doing very, very good maintaining this balance.
Thank you, Ms. Neha, for comments. Mr. Selen, would you like to add something?
I'm sorry, can you come again? What was the question?
We were talking about why is it important to have net zero, and from a community perspective, why is it important that we're talking about this issue?
So it's very important in terms of reducing the carbon emissions, and as I already said that our logistics industry is one of the greatest polluters in terms of contributing 60%. So the temperatures are rising, and the decision in the climate action group to reduce the temperature worldwide by at least 1.5 degrees or keep it to the pre-industrialization level. It is important to go net zero, and there are organizations like ours. We are working on various initiatives, from simple things like covering all the warehouse roofs with solar and having positive energy contribution to the grid, to bringing electric energy, hydrogen vehicles. So many things are required to be done, because in countries in the Gulf and the developing countries, there are hugely dependent on energy needs, and fossil fuels are being consumed in great quantity, and especially a lot of countries whose GDP is oil dependent. For them it will be very tough. So they need to, countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Venezuela, Nigeria, Russia, etc. They need to find out new and innovative ways of how to become net zero.
Right. Thank you. So my next question to the group is, we know that if something cannot be measured, it cannot be managed properly. So it's the word of Peter Drucker. And in the context of emissions, what are some of the ways in which it is being measured? And both, when I'm talking about measurements, it's both measurements of direct emission as well as indirect emissions. And what are some of the, is there any regulation or mandate on reporting emissions in India, globally? Can the group talk about this in the next few minutes?
Right, Professor. So I think I'll have a go at that. And see, this kind of measurement is at the moment at a very nebulous stage. One of the things that we measure, and we have a benchmark for within ITC, is on plastic waste management, right? So all our businesses, mine being the foods business, is probably one of the largest polluters, right? All these 5 rupee, 10 rupee packs of biscuits and chips, etc. They are putting in a lot of plastic into the environment. And we are acutely conscious of this. Not only our business, but if you take all of the FMCG businesses of ITC, the agarbatti, matchbox, the personal care products, etc. So what we did internally was, first of all, we measured how much plastic are we putting into the environment every year ourselves. And our number for that, and this is an accurate number, is about 26,000 tons per annum is what we are putting into the environment. And to mitigate this, about 10 years back, we started a program called WOW. WOW is an acronym for Wealth Out of Waste. So the fundamental, very simple. We have empowered across 28 cities. We have tied up with NGOs who in turn have a lot of these rag pickers and waste collectors who are associated with them. And through this collection program of WOW, we've been able to, over the years, ramp up our plastic collection and recycling. And I'm very proud to say this, as of 31st March, the closure of last financial year, we took back from the environment 56,000 tons of plastic. We put in 26, we took back 56. But the only thing is, obviously, it cannot be guaranteed that every piece of plastic which has got my brand on it has been picked up. We pick up, when I talk about 56,000 tons, it could probably have, plastic waste from levers or Godrej or everybody else. But that's what we are doing. And what happens with this plastic that we pick up? So they are being converted into recyclable plastic containers. They are being, off late over the last 3 years, we've been very successful in making plastic bricks. These are very light and they are very resilient, and they are, they can be used against normal bricks or Potram bricks. And last 2 years, we've been cooperating with the National Highways Authority of India. We've been collaborating and we've been sending plastic granules, which after recycling, after collection, recycling, and the rest of the expenses works out to about 28 rupees a kilo, Professor. Versus if a highway contractor has to buy bitumen, that is at almost 42 rupees a kilo today. Now, when you blend these granules with the bitumen at the time of making road, and you make roads with that, there is a particular blend proportion. But the roads which finally happen are far more resilient. They in fact last more than 3 times the ones which have been made with normal bitumen mix. So we are very encouraged with this. And India, as a nation, we are growing, we are building roads at an amazing pace. And this is something which is not only using the plastic waste, but we are able to measure what we do and give you a real picture on that one.
Okay.
Back to you, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Somnath. Mr. Preet, would you like to add something?
Yeah, Professor. The answer probably is yes and no. Why I'm saying yes, we are measuring, we are able to measure, because ultimately, being a corporate, everything has to get converted into a profit. So whenever we go in for a renewable energy initiative or any initiative that makes it carbon neutral, or at least helps us reduce the carbon emissions, it has to get converted into certain euro or so much of a turnover. Now, for example, if I need to power my workshop through solar panels, the admin or the workshop manager would only send me a calculation which would say that this is how much cost it saves. But then very clearly it doesn't say that this is what he's eliminating. He's eliminating power or energy produced by fossil fuel, which certainly definitely have to go down. That's one. Why I'm saying no, we are not measuring is because I'm not actually going into a calculation or any kind of a simulation where I say that this is the activity that I'm performing, and hence this is so much of carbon that I'm releasing into the atmosphere. Now, what do I do to take it back? So there is no such calculation. Very few corporates would be doing that. That's one. But yeah, then this is the first part. The second part, yes, there is a lot of shareholder activism working towards making corporates or the success stories they want to write it. But then at times it becomes, certainly at times it becomes unmanageable, even with a lot of shareholder interest and even with deal makers and financiers. So the easiest way then happens is that we walk out from that kind of a business or that kind of a production process or that kind of supply chain. So then it turns out that I harvest in the north and fill the south with all the husk. This is what is happening globally. So being the shareholder a little more active, I take my hat off and give it somebody else to handle it. So this is if not more, but equally risky to do. So when you say we need to measure to monitor, that's correct. But then, like I said, it has to be end to end. If I have to dispose of an asset just because it's not helping me in my policy or principle or my commitment to be carbon neutral, I just give it off to somebody else. There's a lot of data, even in the last 5 years, assets that were creating imbalances on the carbon emission. There were about less than half the people who sold it were from the non-listed part. And so that clearly says that the public interest, or when you have to publish your data related to this, so there is so much more awareness compared to the private sector, people who are not listed. So this is what is causing us to now work and have that total end-to-end. What Somnath was mentioning, I'm sorry, Shukla had mentioned that people are not willing to pay extra to get sustainable. Totally, I wouldn't agree with that because if we are sustainable, we're producing sustainability, then we are not looking at a premium, because by just doing that, by producing a more sustainable product, we have seen that we automatically become much more economical and more competitive. And definitely it's not a fashion statement for us either. So it is a commitment that we'll have to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Preet. Ms. Neha, would you like to add something?
I think the measurement, of course, so there's a normal saying that we say, right? Something that you measure is where you improve. If you don't measure, you can't improve because you don't know where you are. And hence, it's important. But today, I feel there are no accurate ways by which you measure very correctly, right? And hence, what you need to do is make it much more available, or at least make people much more conscious about it. The moment you make much more conscious, people will start, because as an individual, if you go and ask, people are conscious about it. They are also wanting to, but most of them are not aware as to how do they contribute, right? And it can happen in multiple ways. One is by putting, like I stay in Maharashtra, and there was a good plastic ban that had come where we'd stopped getting any plastic bag from any vendors. Right now, it worked two ways. People started charging a little premium because you will either have to buy a cloth bag or a paper bag, which was at least 5 to 10 times of the cost of the regular one. And people started carrying a bag on their own. Like most of them had the habit, and they still continue to have one. But once that ban kind of remained on paper, that became an issue. Or it's also about companies thinking. So see, all we are thinking is about preventing after it has been generated. Why not have the thoughts at generation itself? Like, I'll give a very good example of innovation that we did at Godrej. That's powder to liquid hand wash, which is Mr. Magic, and a lot of companies are now coming with the same product, right? So the thought there was, hand wash is something that has, soap has 100% penetration in, or 99% penetration in India, but hand wash has nearly double-digit penetrations. Now, how can you make hand washing accessible? And it's a costly affair to put, because it's bulky in nature. How do you transport it, etc., etc.? But why not change the way in which the product gets made itself? And hence, we launched something which is as good as 15 rupees sachet, where we encourage the customers to reuse a bottle. So if you have a plastic bottle at home, reuse it, or if you want, we give it to you for the first time. But that's how the brand has taken it on themselves. So it cuts the, I mean, if you ask me, the hand wash, the same, if I have to talk in Indian parlance, an 18-tonner truck, the amount of hand wash that it can carry in a liquid format versus the way it is carrying for us as Mr. Magic, it would be 15 times, right? So imagine the kind of emissions that you're cutting, and it's a product which is launched at a price point which is affordable to the consumer. And hence, while COVID gave it a good headwind because a lot of hygiene habits change, but there are a lot of customers who are now converting themselves into it. And as a user, you're giving them an option. that you need not buy a bottle every time. You can have a refill. But while a lot of them did have a refill of 1.5 liter, but that again comes in a plastic laminate, right? So these are examples where we have to think at the initiation itself. Prevention will happen, right? But why not think of options where you go ahead and prevent it? Like Colgate is now coming up with a bamboo toothpaste, right? Stop it at the initiation itself. Then by design, if you'll generate less, we will have lesser worry of preventing. It's a journey. I agree. It's not going to happen overnight. But this is a perfect example because earlier a 200 ml hand wash costed somewhere around 45 rupees. We launched something which is at a 15 rupees. Right, and it is much lesser in terms of carbon footprint, emission, everything that it comes to. So that's where companies have to think out of the box, and that's where I feel technology will have a lot of role to play, because that's something that has got us where it is. Industrialization has brought us here, but now the reverse cycle has to happen. The technology will play the role of reversing this and giving us this kind of products. So I would say while measurement is accurate, but cut it at the beginning itself.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Neha. Mr. Shelin, do you want to add something to this discussion?
Yeah, so measurement, honestly, unless you are a global organization like a Unilever or P&G, is not happening in most of the SMEs, mid-sized governments. And where it is happening and is being highlighted is, I'd like to give you a few examples here in UAE. We piloted the electric bus and hydrogen buses to the local RTA, which is the Road Transport Authority. And seeing that, they went to China and saw the demonstration, and they said that we want to convert our entire fleet of 5,000, 6,000 buses to electric in the next 3 years. So they took very, ambitious statement, and they measured that what will be the saving in emissions and how we can, become net zero. Also, an example of measurement is that, we have an energy authority called DEWA, Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. So they give you your monthly, carbon footprint, and they give you a comparison month on month, that how, in which month you did better and in which month you were worse off. And also they give you an alert. So suppose if I leave my, say, AC running for the night, or, if the garden tap for the water is open, you immediately get an alert that, look, your consumption has gone up suddenly by so much percent. Sometimes, if you leave the garden tap, and here water is very costly, almost 50% of my energy bill is water and 50% is electricity. So people are very careful. So you immediately, within 1 or 2 hours of, the tap being left open, you get an alert, and they show you in terms of measurement, what has been the loss to you in terms of rupees, how much gallons of water was wasted, and what was the carbon footprint. Also, there are government agencies, who do not certify, who do not allow you. Here, you cannot dispose of the waste in the UAE just like that. It is a criminal offense. You could get arrested and penalized. So as an organization, if I have to go and dump something like old computers or any kind of waste, even if it's a dangerous goods or something like that, I have to pay the Dubai municipality some charges, something like, say 5,000, 10,000 rupees per truck. And I get a certificate that, yes, we have received your waste. This will be recycled. And, it's like a pat on the back, that you have done a service to the environment, by saving this much, and we will recycle this. And also there are, you cannot just collect say scrap or garbage, you have to be certified by the government, by the local government. In Dubai, probably in some areas like, Jebel Ali Free Zone, you have only one agency called Imdad, which is certified by the, Port Authority, DP World, to collect waste, because you have to have recycling facilities. You just cannot become a waste buyer or a scrap buyer just like that. So a lot of things are measured and a lot of things are not measured. So I think government is more aware and alert. We have colonies here who are, called sustainable colonies. We have Mastar Park in Abu Dhabi, which is totally run on solar. there are colonies which are net zero, they actually contribute to the grid and totally run by solar. So I think at government level, a lot of effort is being done in terms of measurement and reporting so that people become aware in terms of, what to do, how to save. But I think in private sector, very little is being done. And possibly I've seen countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and rest of the Gulf, Egypt, North Africa, very little is being done by the private sector in terms of measurement. Unless you're Amazon or Jumia or somebody so big, very, very few steps being taken to measure and control. And as I think Neha said that, if you can't measure, you can't control.
Exactly. Thank you for the discussion. So next, what we would like to discuss is, as all of you have said that, technology would play a very important part, right, in achieving this net zero. So do you think that the technology, as of now, probably the technology is still nascent, right? So there is a scope of development of technology. Do you think that the technological innovation, the rate at which the technological innovation would happen, would help, or it would be within the 2050 that we'll be able to meet net zero, or are we over promising and there's a high risk of under delivery here?
If I can have a go, I think technology is going to play a very big role in terms of reducing the emissions and controlling various things. As I've already given the example of the electric buses that we are introducing here, the hydrogen vehicles that we are trying to bring in to this region, even though hydrogen technology is still on the evolution stage and a long way to go. But also in terms of technology, I'd like to give 2-3 examples from my own implementations which we have done. So we started a e-commerce company in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. And from the day one, we had integration with a last mile delivery software. Now, a last mile delivery software typically, only the courier companies are using, or if you are, very large e-commerce company would be using. Otherwise, typically there are a huge number of companies which have a fleet of 50 trucks, 100 trucks. Nobody is using the last mile delivery optimization. So we did a simulation and we found that by implementing and going through the correct route, the proper planning and routing, we were able to save almost 25-30% of the overall fuel consumption, otherwise, which we would have had. And unfortunately, I have a lot of friends in the last mile industry, and we, sit on a beer and we discuss and we say, oh, did you implement? No, the management is more focused on implementing something for sales, implementing something for the finance, but nobody is focused on logistics. They don't care. They say, ठीक है, काम चल रहा है ना, चलने दो, क्यों पैसा खर्च करने का? So people are not willing to invest, even though where there is a clear ROI, even then they are not willing to invest. Another example we would give is that, we are running a trucking marketplace in India and UAE. In India, we have almost 150,000 trucks on our platform. And here in UAE, almost 2,000 trucks. UAE is a very small place. Dubai has a 3 million population, smaller than Delhi. So number of vehicles is less, but we have a routing and planning software, which typically, trucks don't use, even though you may be in e-commerce, you will use, or if you're a very large company, you will use. But typically in the trucking industry, nobody is using. And we applied that on our own fleet of about 200 trucks. We again found that there is a fuel saving of 20-30%. There's a saving in time. Drivers are happy. They're coming back faster. They're coming back earlier. They're doing more delivery. And, small things, if typically in a marketplace, if you're hiring trucks from the platform, the technology doesn't cost you anything because, it's embedded in the margins that we get from the trucks and the transporters. So it's a very amazing thing. It's free for you. If you're hiring trucks from a platform, something like a Uber for trucks, you get this routing, planning and tracking and EPOD and what have you, free of cost. Also, there are so many other technologies, again, coming back and talking a bit about the olden days, when we were kids, we would never go to market without a jhola. Jhola, not even in JNU, but in other places was a status symbol. You'd buy all your vegetables there. As a child, I've never used a plastic or a paper bag. And if you had to buy more vegetables, you had 2 jholas or you had 3 jholas. So these are some small things, which we should remember and maybe, try and implement. Because again, as we see, you go to a store, they ask you for 5 dirham, which is something like $100 for a, cloth bag. You'll see 99% of the people don't want to buy, they don't want to pay. So technological advancement is something, which will take us there, definitely, I'm sure. Thanks.
Okay.
So if I may chip in, Shukla Saab, paper is good. You must use more paper, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so it's a Sunday afternoon. I think I'm feeling a little sleepy, and I'm sure many on this forum are probably also feeling. So let me wake you up by telling you a little story, and not very long, short story, but it'll either put you to sleep completely or it'll wake you up. Okay, so let's hope it wakes you up. So this one goes back to 1991 when there was this paper company. It's still there. It's called Bhadrachalam. It was in a very remote interior part of Andhra Pradesh, earlier Andhra Pradesh. And that was an area, that was a business which was going, it had gone BIFR, they had gone bust. And there was a lot of problems over there because of abject poverty. The land around Bhadrachalam had completely got denuded. Nothing would grow there. It was all anyway erstwhile forest land. And the tribals were very poor and a lot of Nakshalism there. Poverty breeds all these kind of problems. And that's when ITC entered. So speaking about technology and sustainability, for the first time back then in 1991, we, after we took over the plant, the easiest thing for us to do when we had the money to kind of make it a state-of-the-art plant, to change the machinery and the factory itself. But that won't have solved the problem. The problem was deeper. So what we did was, for 5 years after buying that business, we worked with the tribals and we gave them new genetical material of sal trees, right? Which were, at that point of time, they would grow very fast. They would be ready to be harvested in about 5 years. And for a period of 5 years, we worked with the tribals, we gave them a stipend, and we worked with them, and our first batch of sal trees came up, and we very proudly kind of harvested them. By then, we had already rejigged the plant and we were ready to go. That was 91. Today, what's happened? All of you guys are experts in Googling, so please Google and find out there are these drone videos which of that area around Bhadrachalam factory, which show you that there is a 128,000 hectare lush green forest around our ITC Bhadrachalam paper factory, right? This has been what we have achieved over the last 2.5 decades. Those tribals, and there is no Nakshal problem there, those tribals are earning a lot of money. That factory earlier used to get its fiber pulp, the wood pulp used to come from Indonesia, and there were high duties. It was a long transit, right? Now our raw material for that factory grows outside the factory gate, and my supplier is the custodian of that forest. Okay, and over the years, those first batch of tribals who had helped us, their grandchildren have gone to colleges such as even the MIT in the US, and they've come back and they run our plants. So they are the engineering people who run the plants. So for that community, that plant is like a temple. I mean, those guys, their entire 3 generations are kind of intertwined with that business. And Neha made a point that whether consumers will pay extra for something sustainable. So, well, in India, maybe not, because we're still a poor country. But when we sell ITC Bhadrachalam paper abroad, we export a lot, we get a heckload of carbon credits. And we actually command a premium in the international market for that. And therefore, we have this credo, Shukla Saab, where we say you should print, you should use paper, paper is good. And the technology, so that 1991 में जो sal trees हमने लगाए थे, they used to grow in 5 years, right? Aaj, with the patented gene pool that we've got, they grow in 3.5 years, and they consume 5 times less water. And the beauty is, not only are the tribals happy, but for the first time since 2009, that area of Andhra Pradesh, United Andhra Pradesh, actually gets the highest rainfall in the entire state. You know, they say that trees beget rain, and that's so true. So, you know, it's an ultimate example or use case of how we've been able to transform this. And today we are making a lot of money, you know, by having done this transformation. Another quick example, and again, technology. So today, not only are we using superior genetical material to grow our trees, but we have drones which are telling us where the watering should happen, where the nutrients should be given. We have feeds which are coming in 24/7, and it's brilliant. I mean, the kind of synergy that we are able to achieve, and all of this results in usage of less fertilizer and less water, right? So yeah, something we started in 91. We are still carrying on, and we are just adding technological pieces to it. Another thing is, if you ever try to buy an Indigo ticket, you go to their website, you know, they even tell you how much carbon footprint you're going to be, right? You can see it there. They are actually publicizing it. And there are consumers who are actually looking at that when they make their traveling decision. Similarly, if you go and stay in our hotels, there is this clientele who actually come and use our hotels because it's Leeds 7-star rated. They are. Now, it is a tough business out there. Hotels business is very tough. It's cutthroat competition. So I can't actually be charging a great premium over a competitor like Taj or Oberoi's. However, all things remaining equal, there are certain people who are today saying, okay, if Taj is giving the same rate and so is ITC, but ITC is also friendly to the environment, right? And they're giving us, so even at the time of checkout, they can give you the full details of how much you've saved, right? How much you helped the earth by your 2-day stay in ITC. So that is something which is catching on slowly. And again, we are deploying a whole lot of technology, and we are being able to give that result and output to our customers. Back to you, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Somnath. So, Mr. Preet, would you like to add something?
Yeah, Professor Mukherjee, like in my opening remarks, I said that technology is no longer the option that we discuss. That's the only way we can reach anywhere which we target. Now, even as per my estimates, if we are saying that 2070 will be a workable target to be net zero, still the technology has to go by at least 11 or 12 generations up. So that's the kind of investment we need to make in technology. That's one. To add to the story which Somnath was just narrating, there is an underlying technology involved, because how many cells tree need to grow to balance the water offtake from the soil, what kind of fertilizer that need to go in. So all those are simulated and can make agriculture grow much faster. Similarly, technology I can use to find out the best source and the best high intensity sun rays to have the solar panels working. And then I can optimize my consumption pattern. So it's technology and technology everywhere. So anything that needs to survive this year onwards has to be totally digitalized. So there is no survival without technology. But then there are no clear choices, because when we say technology, so if we are looking at Bitcoin, we were just discussing papers. So if you just look at a Bitcoin with the kind, I don't think even 1% or 0.1% of the population of the world even are trading in cryptocurrency or own it. But even at that minimal level, they are using probably the power consumption for them is as high as one of the smaller countries like Norway, maybe probably for Denmark as well. So there needs to be a certain kind of a balance. But the answer to your question, yes, technology has to go up. One, because that is also an answer to your earlier question. The second, in terms of monitoring the data to be able to control it. So technology is the way to go, and without it, we are nowhere. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Preet. Ms. Neha, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I think both Somnath and Preet said that it's nothing but there's no other option but technology. We'll have to go ahead and move it. And if more and more users start using it, it would become even affordable. Like one good example is solar, where initially it was very difficult to get, but with government and private partnership and people collaborating, now it is affordable. So if you see most of the factories or the warehousing, or at least even as a household, right? Like state of Gujarat is very good example, where almost 40% of the household which are like have become electrified through solar energy, right? So I think when we have more and more technology coming up as an option, more and more users coming up, I think one, it will become affordable, and once it becomes affordable, I think the reach is going to be much better. I'll give a simple example. Like I maintain a step tracker so that I see that do I clock 10,000 steps every day. If I have something similar for my sustainably output, like give an example, right? If I know this much is what I have used and I have a quota defined for myself, it would be very easy, right? People would want to go ahead and use such things. One is make them aware. So I think like Somnath said of ITC hotels, we should make it much more popular and visible as a choice to people so that they choose the right options. Other is make it affordable. Once it is affordable, people will be more than happy to use it, and then we'll have much more users collaboratively building towards this.
Okay. Thank you so much for your comments and insights on this topic. So I think we have discussed the topic at length for almost an hour or so. Now I think I would open the floor for question and answers from the audience.
I just want to add a point to what
please.
Somnath said. And Somnath is really very credible, and I really want to applaud what ITC has done in ITC Bhadrachalam. But also flip side of the coin, I was working in Vedanta and I've lived in a place called Silvassa, which is close to Vapi, which has about, on the Gujarat-Maharashtra border, one of the largest concentration of small paper mills. And it is so polluting, so hugely polluting, that the river flowing into the sea is almost red with, I don't know, whatever acidic discharge and effluents that they have. Nobody uses a ETP. And probably, the paper industry could get together and, advise these smaller companies, on to how to control emission and pollution.
नहीं वो हो रहा है शुक्ला साहब. In fact, it is, I'm sure everyone's these MBA students should appreciate the fact that ultimately it is धंधा, and धंधे में consolidation बहुत necessary है. और ये जितने भी छोटे paper mills हैं, who flound the law with impunity, I think today those guys are coming under a lot of pressure, not only from the government but also from their own business. It's just that they're doing business unsustainably, and the kind of chemicals that they buy, the overuse of chemicals, and that is making them unsustainable. And many of them are now consolidating. As a result, today there is a massive shortage of paper actually in the country. But that's, of course, that's another discussion. Back to you, Professor.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, you may please go ahead and ask.
You kindly raise your hand so that we can unmute. Yes,
Good afternoon to the panel. Thank you for your time and patience in explaining all these sustainability aspects that affect us today. Something that I feel is ignored, as Mr. Somnath explained, that many of the companies are ignoring the sustainability goals that they should be striving for. Do you see any leaders in the market who are trying to achieve this, at least setting examples, who maybe can trickle down to the SMEs as well, small and medium-sized enterprises.
All right, should I take that? So, the good thing is that there are several large organizations within the country, and, organizations such as Goodrich, HUL, my erstwhile organization where I worked for many years, Nestle in India. All of these organizations are actually driving down the sustainability bit. In fact, I think, it was also touched upon that not only should we be measuring what we do. So if my plant has a very good ETP and my plant is carbon neutral and solid waste neutral and water neutral, that doesn't mean that all the raw and packaging material which is coming into that plant from the back end, that is also like the same. So today we have some very stringent goals. And I know that there are several companies in India who are doing that along with ITC, who are working with their vendors and their back-end supply chain to ensure this and to educate them. There are two ways of doing it. One is to be very selective and straight away, look at your vendor base and all those guys who are non-compliant, just strike them out and work with those guys who are compliant, and maybe then you have to pay a premium. The other way and the more difficult path which ITC embarks on is to try and sab saath bade, सबको साथ में लेके चलो, उनको सिखाओ तो सही, अपने छोटे MSME suppliers जो हैं उनको भी सिखाओ, how can they be more efficient in harnessing every resource possible, right? And when you do that, you actually unleash a lot of potential for yourself, right? So, and I think a lot of companies in India are doing this along with ITC. For instance, HUL and Nestle along with us, we started not only within our country, we took sustainable palm oil all the way back to Indonesia and Malaysia. So we are now working with something called and Goodrich, of course, through Mr. Dorab Mistry and the rest of them. They are the ones who created the RSPO, the Round Table of Sustainable Palm Oil. Yeah. So a lot of good work has been happening, and I'm sure it is something which is getting exacerbated as we go along, because now it is not something nice to have; it is becoming essential.
Right, sir. Something that you raised just now about MSMEs. So this is the question to the panel, that what do you think is the motivation for such companies, the small scale companies, for them to embark on such a journey? Because I think it's more work than reward for them, pain than pleasure, if they embark on something at their scale of operations.
If they don't do it, they won't have business. So like Somnath said, it's becoming essential. So MSME, see, you will not have an MSME who only has MSME as other clients, right? So and what the companies are doing is they are not just cutting them off, they are helping them. In fact, a lot of them are even funding their initiatives to make them compliant. So if somebody is helping you do this, why stay non-compliant? So that's how that's the motivation to get good marquee client, because most of them would command this from them, and if they are not compliant, they may not work with them. So it's one of the business essentials for any MSME to be compliant. Otherwise, they may not get good clients.
For MSMEs, I also have a point. It is the responsibility of the developed countries, who are dumping their production to smaller companies, say across China, Bangladesh, or other places. So if Adidas is getting their clothes made in small factories in Bangladesh, it is their duty to make sure that they enforce these sustainable practices on their vendors. You are in US and you are raising fingers at China for being the worst polluter in the world, but they are making everything for you. You have done that production on them, and you are not ensured that your vendors follow sustainable practices. So I think that also is a point where large organizations like Adidas or Nike or whoever is outsourcing these things to smaller vendors, make sure that the vendors are using sustainable practices.
Very quickly, Professor, if I may just give you one concrete example of how we worked with our MSMEs. Now, this is, so one of the highly toxic inks which I used for printing laminates. So when you consume a packet of atta or a biscuit or noodles, bingo chips, etc., all the 9 beautiful colors that you said, all those graphics, right? So it uses a lot of ink, sometimes 9 or 10 colors. And these are toluene and ketones, very, very toxic, right? So what we did was we worked for a campaign for non-toluene, non-ketone. And what we, another big pollutant and something which is today very expensive are solvents. Solvents are expensive today, right? So what we did was we worked with our vendors and introduced, we gave them the technology. They did not know. So of course they bought the machines, and some places where they didn't have the money, we made advances to them to buy the latest water-based inks, okay, which are completely eliminating ketones and toluene, right? And also it is based on evaporation. So what happens is the entire use of solvents are negated. And this ultimately, while the capex is a little high, but ultimately it pays for itself in about a couple of years, and it pays back to the environment for 20 years. So that machine is now going to be, working for the next 20 years. And overall, that guy, he has not only recovered his initial cost, but he is now more competitive because his cost of production has come down. So, you got to work, and there is no one shoe which fits all, but you got to get into each aspect, work with the people, and try and get this on. Like another quick example, we are probably after Coke and Pepsi, the third largest buyer of sugar in the country, right? So we work very closely with the sugar industry, and there is a fiber which they produce. What is the used sugar cane after crushing and extracting the juice? It's called bagasse, right? And bagasse is traditionally used by those same sugar mills to kind of fuel their boilers. It's very inefficient. It causes a lot of pollution, and they are probably replacing something which is much smarter by bagasse. Their return for that bagasse is about 3 to 4 rupees a kilo. Whereas if they were to sell the same to the fiber industry, like people who make craft paper with which the CFCs are made. So our products go into the market in these boxes, gatta jisko bolte hain hum log. So gatte ko banane ke liye jo fiber hai aaj ki date mein India mein, there's a huge shortage, as I was mentioning some time back. And we've just been able to do this connect between the sugar industry and the paper industry, the ones who make craft paper. And now about 30 to 33% of bagasse is being used there, right? And it's far more efficient. And this bagasse can, this gatta is again recycled in India. So there is like about 2 or 3 times the rotation can happen. So yeah, you've got to look at everything with a microscope and try and work each lever that you get.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Professor. Okay, Mr. Das, probably you are coming out from a premise where you feel that whenever you do good or to do any kind of a good, you need to pay for it. Yeah, you need to pay to get a good thing. But here in sustainability in a discussion, you would see it is the other way around. You do good and you get paid very well. That's one part. So, and then MSMEs are now in various lectures that I attend, and I deliver lectures to MSME. We have been trying them to come out of that sobriquet and work as MNCs, or maybe better in terms of processes. In terms of how corporates are helping, means as far as ThyssenKrupp is concerned, the supply chain management concept is not only about working with you and your company and your assets only. It's about developing right through end to end. So that's very important, because SCM is just not an acronym, it is a philosophy. So that we need to understand very well when you come out on the corporate world. ThyssenKrupp does a sustainability audit for all the vendors that it works with. And when I say audit, is not about only fault finding, or it is about just about finding the gaps and helping them to improve. And it's such a successful program of the process that we run for all our MSMEs, is that during negotiation, most of these MSMEs would probably give us a more competitive price, so that at least they get audited as per ThyssenKrupp standards. So that's how market is progressing, the industry is progressing towards net zero. So there's a total commitment. Thank you.
Can we take one last question from Vivek?
Yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon and thank you for the session. I have a quick question. So one is when you look at from the climate change or sustainability aspect, we see a future that's glooming. They're not meeting targets at most. It looks a little wrong on that side. And on the flip side, when you talk about business, like one of the comments that were made was that business is not charity. So it needs to look on how it can actually deliver. One more point that was mentioned was innovation is the key main driver. So I just wanted to check up. So considering both the premise that I posed, what are the other levers other than innovation that we can think or something that has been implemented at your end?
Technology is the biggest lever that we are talking, right? So I remember I mentioned innovation as one of the levers, but technology would be another lever, like what Shailin spoke of, that every trip can be utilized as an example, but we don't use it. But now in India, this is something that has been driven in a very big way. So pre-COVID, if you see the TMS implementation that India had was close to 25%, and now that has gone to 70%. Why? Because most of the players want their vehicles to be utilized. One is because yes, availability was itself was a challenge. Other is thanks to the rising fuel cost that it is pinching the budget. So they go hand in hand, right? So technology will again play a good lever, good example, like I spoke to you. Like if you are an Indigo flyer and you're seeing and checking it, right? That's where technology is enabling you make the right, the better choice. So that's how we will get there. And about business, I think they go hand in hand. It's not about replacing. And most of the shareholders are now getting much more conscious about how sustainable you are. And if you are not, you may not command that kind of a premium in market. So I think it's a very, very long-term view versus a short-term view that we take. I mean, we heard of a very good example of ITC Bhadrachalam as one perfect place where we become invested and waited for it to come, and now we see the amazing results that have come out. But I think they go hand in hand. Technology is one big lever. Innovations will follow, or the way in which you do business, that will come. I think it's about just making everyone conscious. If you make people conscious, it will become good. Now, how do you make them conscious? Is by using right technology, right?
Vivek,
Okay,
one
so
more
rather
point I
quick
can add.
Sorry,
I can add
please go
just one point. One point, Vivek, is that people are also looking at low-hanging fruits like solar, which is very low tech, doesn't need any investment. You can lease it and still gives you returns in terms of 30-40% reduction in your power bills. So almost I think everybody who has a large warehouse or a large factory where the roof can be covered with solar panels is doing it, because of course you need an investment of 1 or 2 million, but there are companies who are actually financing solar projects, which are actually finance companies, and they will just execute the project and share the profits with you for the next 25 years or so. So very low tech thing, solar, but it's hugely popular here in the Gulf countries.
very quickly. Very recent example of how we use technology, and it was brilliant. In fact, all of you would have been reading that there is a problem with wheat in the country this year. Many of you would have seen it, and suddenly last week the government put a ban on exports, and overall there is a shortage, etc. There is a shortage of wheat in the world because a lot of the wheat is stuck in Ukraine and China and Russia. Sorry. So what happened is, sometime back in the chat box put about ITC eChopal 4.0, right? So eChopal is a very old initiative of ITC, and it's a Harvard case study today. But this is the 4.0 version, which is now in a beta version, which is there with 15,000 farmers. We are in a tryout stage for this. It's in the handphones of the farmers, and it's an app which is working. And through this app, back in November, we had advised our farmers that they should not delay planting of wheat, because we were anticipating a quick onset of summer this year. Okay, and because of that rise in temperatures in late March, the wheat crop shriveled in India, and this is what is the net outcome of this. So those who had listened to our advisory at back and then, in November and had planted early were able to reap it also early, harvest it early, and they got saved from this particular debacle. And guess what? There are farmers, many of the places we contract farm, so we got the wheat, right? So it's not that, so the farmer is happy. He got saved from a weather vagary and a debacle there. And through our app, we are happy we got the wheat. So, you know, it can work, and it does work here and now, right? And you guys are the tomorrow, the future. I'll just sign off by saying this. You guys are the ones who are going to make this work. I'm an old foggy now. Don't go by the color of my hair. It's all dye. I've been 30 years in this industry, and it's up to you guys now to ensure that you make India shine through technology and through sustainability, right? With that, back to you, Professor. Good luck and God bless.
Thank you. So I think we have taken all the questions, right, from the audience.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
On behalf of XLRI, ExPGDM cohort, I take immense pleasure in thanking each and every panelist for taking out your time on a Sunday afternoon and sharing your rich experience with all our cohort. I'm sure that everyone enjoyed the session and it was a very enthusiastic conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much. And sorry for extending by 7 minutes.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. Take care.
programs. At XLRI, we focus on a management education framework that is integrative and offers students an opportunity to develop and pursue new ideas at the same time. We constantly evolve our curriculum. Besides the flagship programs, XLRI has added many new executive and certificate programs over the years to meet the growing demand of various industry sectors. Our virtual interactive learning program and entrepreneurship programs are our two key offerings.
Learning at XLRI is different from the way learning happens elsewhere. One reason is because of the use of cases. We use cases to relate academic concepts with industry application.
Two dimensions that I would talk about: sustainability of our leadership, our journey in our leadership, high integrity life. Back in the days, before any of the other institutes started doing it, we had business ethics as a compulsory course. For me, that consonance of my own ethical framework with the institute, and now my own ethical framework with my company, that served me immensely. So today when I stand and talk about ethics, it comes from this core of me. And Excel helped frame this and helped give it shape even before I knew what this was all about. And now it's who I am, it's the core of who I am.
Gave me confidence, Excel gave me purpose, and Excel gave me a lot of confidence to try different things. That's a huge set of experiences I had. And that stood me in good stead because I went to become a management trainee in Hindustan Lever, where I could never have been without the Excel ticket, and without having excelled in Excel, I wouldn't have made it to HUL. And I've been with Unilever all 25 years of my career, so clearly the move from Excel to HUL was great for me. I really think that Excel
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tushar Sinha, Deputy General Secretary at Placement Committee. I'll be host for this session, and we have Nidesh Shukla as the co-host. So global supply chain risks and marketing disruptions are at unprecedented high. With this increasing unpredictability, businesses are looking for solutions to make their supply chain more self-reliant and resilient. Today at ClockSpeed 2.0, the supply chain conclave at XLRI, we are delighted to have Mr. Shubhranshu Datta, who is the Supply Chain Director for FemCare at Procter & Gamble, P&G. Mr. Datta is an alumnus of NIT-IE and NIT Jamshedpur. Professionally, he has 17 years of experience with P&G in operations, manufacturing excellence, planning, and warehousing. Currently, he is responsible for end-to-end business planning for FemCare for India and BNS countries. Mr. Datta is also passionate about supply chain flow, equity and inclusion, community services, fitness, and communication and sustainability. Please join me to welcome Mr. Datta at ClockSpeed 2.0, who will be sharing his thoughts on building supply chain resilience. Mr. Datta.
Hey, morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible, Tushar.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be part of this group. It's surprise, like I didn't attend classes like these on Sundays, so it's a big thank you to all of you to turn up on an event like this on a Sunday evening. And hopefully the next few minutes that we have a discussion, I'm able to share some of my perspectives on resilience, the topic that I would be trying to cover, and maybe learn a little bit from you. Happy to take questions. So if you have any questions, please put it along in the chat box and we'll take it towards the end. So to be frank, I don't have too much content to cover. but I'll share my thoughts, experiences over the last 2 years, how I have seen resilience coming up. A lot of it, of course, is from PNG, but also from reading, understanding, following various other notable people who have talked about this topic. Yeah. Let me know when my screen is visible.
It's visible, sir. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So all of you can see this ship on the screen. I hope all of you relate to this, or at least those who have been following any form of news would have read about this ship, which was in the headlines for almost 10 days and even further. And this was the ship is called Evergreen, and one of the largest container ships, probably the largest container ships in the world. It blocked the Suez Canal, and every day it blocked. There were ships piling up at both, and it's supposed to be one of the busiest lanes between the Western world and the Eastern world, and a lot of stuff keeps moving between this. The impact, as this whole choking happened, the impact that was estimated was that for every day that the ship was stuck, there was loss of roughly $1 billion of business. Yeah. Sorry, every day it was $10 billion of business. Every hour it was around $400 million of business loss. If you were to multiply that to the 7-8 days that it was stuck, it converts to a whooping $80 billion. Interestingly, PNG global revenues is close to that number. So think of it that one random event somewhere in the world caused a loss of revenues equivalent to the revenue of a pretty large size organization like Procter & Gamble. Now, this is one of the various interruptions that we have seen lately, and I see that there was also a discussion on the VUCA world. So there have been a series of disruptions, one following the other, with the whole world thinking, when will these disruptions end? The big one, of course, was COVID, and then Evergreen, and now we have the crisis going on in Europe. So multiple, disruptions coming, and each of these disruption in some form or the other is impacting the supply chain. And this kind of got accelerated, I would say, post the pandemic, and has been kind of on the rise since then. Now, when we see this change over the last 3 years, one of the more common topics pre-pandemic, if I were to put a period, pre-pandemic, the topic that would be more in vogue, more in discussion was around lean, around better just-in-time service and so on. But post the pandemic hitting in and many of these incidents coming in, the more fashionable word is now resilience, and you would probably find more articles, more discussions on resilience, supply chain leaders, even business leaders, heads of organizations talking about resilience, because as these crises unfolded, the organizations realized that some of the choices that were being made earlier were not the most important one, and there was a need to change direction. And creating resilience, more so specifically in the supply chain, has become a big buzzword that everyone is talking about. And with that in mind, I go to the definition of how we look at resilience. So historically, supply chain was looked as a place where you are making, packing, and shipping products. So it's about, if you read any standard definition, it will talk about getting the product at the right place at the right time at the right cost, right? So that definition does not change completely. But post the pandemic, or post this series of crises that have come in, I think additional angle to supply chain that has come up very prominently is the fact that how is this whole capability of resilience enabling your business to even be having a competitive advantage. So resilience has not become just a need, it becomes a competitive advantage for many companies. Across the world, what has happened, and I just heard in the previous discussion about many smaller players who were not very organized, actually had to leave the market because when crises came, they were not resilient enough to survive through the crisis. Other places, large organizations lost their market share massively because they were not able to get the supply chain in order. when you don't have a supply chain in order, what happens is you lose, your share on the shelf. It could be the e-com shelf, it could be the modern retail shelf, or it could be our own local kirana store shelf. And once you lose the shelf, a lot of your consumers, customers have tried a competitor's product. Then it's very, very difficult. It's a dog-eat-dog world there to really get that shelf share back. So this loss of share was something which was bigger in consideration versus a few, rupee or a few paisa in cost, which became a bigger discussion because that's where the bigger value was getting lost. So resilience from a definition standpoint was not only the capability to be able to recover to crises that, okay, there is no interruption. That is not resilience. The definition of resilience as the new order sees is, one, of course, whenever there is a crisis, get back to order. But also when there is a crisis, there is also an opportunity, right? And are you able to work on this opportunity and make the most for your organization when the opportunity comes in? A very classic case, I'm not sure if you have seen some of the WhatsApp videos or the TikTok videos that came across when COVID-related lockdown started impacting in the US. Now, as Indians, maybe we don't relate it to much. We don't relate to toilet roll or toilet paper as much. But in the Western world, there was a crisis. And this was called like the toilet roll crisis or the toilet paper shortage. So what happened is city by city or even state by state in the US, as they continue to announce lockdowns coming in, people started buying much more toilet rolls versus what they would buy in a normal day or a normal week or a normal month. And this led to stockouts to the extent that there were like violent struggle between customers, and people, of course, were recording these with smartphones and sharing about. Now, it's not that people would suddenly, increase consumption of toilet rolls suddenly. Or if we talk about US, toilet rolls are made of paper. The wood which is used for making this paper is most abundantly available in North America, in Canada. So it was not about that it's in some other part of the world which is, in COVID lockdown, so we cannot get the supplies. At that point of time, the ships had not stopped as well. Toilet roll, a product which is made in the US, was actually stock out, right? And there were a lot of factors. It's a great case study. If you go and check on the internet, you will see factors which drove this toilet roll. Now, the story why I'm bringing link to the previous slide, what we were talking about in terms of resilience, this out of stock toilet roll was a crisis, but also a great opportunity. Those organizations which were resilient were able to pick a significant percentage of the growth that came in. It was a one-time growth. It's not that it was sustained. The pre-pandemic levels of toilet paper roll consumption and what consumption we have today is, today's consumption is slightly higher than what it was historically growing. Let's say it was growing 5%, now it is growing 10%. The last year, the growth was to the tune of 2x or 3x of the monthly of the annual growth. Now, this 2x to 3x growth was an opportunity for the more resilient organizations to be able to put their product on the shelf, put the product with the consumer, get them to try. And many times when they tried, they realized the product was maybe slightly better, was available when they needed it, and they made the switch. Now, interestingly, P&G runs a big brand called Charmin in the US, which is the one of the top 3 players in toilet paper. We got almost 2x growth on toilet paper during the months that the crisis hit in. And that's where I think the resilience piece came into picture, that there were certain things which organizations, if they do right, they could build in a lot of resilience in the organization. And this resilience helps when each of these crises is helped. Now, I have been following crises over my 17 years career. And one of the things I noticed, at least for India, I have mostly been in India throughout my career. So I noticed pre-pandemic also the number of disruptions in India. And this is more like a national issue, that we have more crises than other countries in the world. And these are something like, there is covered yatra happening in the north and roads are blocked, or the infrastructure is not very good at times. So rain causes disruption and supply chain stops. The frequency and the magnitude of these impacts were typically larger in India pre-pandemic. And one of the reasons I believe because of handling so many crises along the way, India as a country, I think, was a bit more resilient from a business standpoint, and probably our businesses got less impacted as it would have happened in the West. So coming to this definition again, we look at resilience as a way not only to get your supply chain back, but in case crisis hits, are you able to also leverage the opportunity to grow your business, and supply chain becomes a competitive advantage that the whole leadership uses whenever some of these crises hits. Given it's a Sunday evening, I try to make this a bit of a easy, similarity that I see. And this is something which I realized when I was talking to a taxi driver on one of my trips. And this person was talking about how he does business, and he was giving the basic fundamentals. And I thought there was a very good correlation with the concept of resilience. Now, a great taxi driver, or someone who's running a taxi business, a self-taxi business, what would be fundamentals to help him or her, to have a great run? So this guy explained some very simple things. The first thing he explained is, you need to be in healthy body and mind. The more days you are on the road, the more money you make. Simple as that, right? That's foundation. You as a taxi driver have to be healthy. You have to be of sound mind, and you need to be on the road every day. The more days you are there on the road, the better it is. It's again same. The more time your product is on the shelf, not out of stock, you win market. So this is foundation one. Second is that gadi acha hona chahiye, which means your maintenance has to be in top class. Anytime you have any issues with your car, etc., make sure you get maintenance done. Everything's spick and span. So the human part of it is great. The machine part of it is great. That's like the foundation. Second, he said you should know where the business is coming, and that's to me a bit of prediction. So I know exactly these are the days, or even within the day, these are the hours. I know these are the railway stations where I can get confirmed business. These are the business parks. These are the software parks. I know where the customers are going to be higher probability to get. It's not a guarantee, but higher probability that these are the places I would need to turn up. If I turn up on these places, I can make the maximum revenue, and I will have the least waiting time, right? The second, predictability of where issues are. And again, from a COVID standpoint, it was also that these are the places which are in lockdown. So I need to make sure that I am aware through whatever network of friends I have, through Google Maps, through newspaper, whatever I read. I check out from my friends where there is lockdown. I will typically not even go in that area. It's a safety risk to me, and definitely, low probability of someone coming from this area. So that's the second part of it. So first, foundation, man-machine doing well. Second, predictability, where the business is, where the crisis is. And third piece is being able to get good sense of how your equipment is doing, and not getting into bad issues. It's something as simple as making sure you fill your tank in the morning. If you fill your tank and keep an eye on the fuel indicator, things are in control. It's as simple as that. Or if you have some noise that your equipment is making, you make sure you stop, take that break, make sure you recover either the equipment or you yourself as an individual that you have done 6 hours of continuous driving, take a break. So watch out for the indicators. So those were the three things he said makes my life well, and I make a good bit of money out of this, which I think is a great way to look at supply chain as well, on what are the things that we can learn from this anecdote, which creates a resilient supply chain. Okay, so I try to summarize these three learnings into three areas. One, again, I call them foundation. Second, I call predicting disruption, predicting crises. And the third is the digitalization. Okay, what is foundation? Foundation, if I go for a minute, foundation talks about three things. This is very basic supply chain 101. First starts with talent. And all this, like any kind of resilience, any kind of agility, has to be built on strong foundations. I strongly believe, in all the three that I'm going to share in the next few minutes. So first talks about talent. And when we say talent, one of the things why talent even got a bit highlighted during the crisis is something which is important to note. what happened during crisis is various kind of things start getting out of stock. It could be, someone said like wheat was getting out of stock, or it could be, plastics getting out of stock, or Indonesia has put a ban on palm oil and palm oil is getting out of stock. Various things getting out of stock, right? People are able to turn up to office, may not be able to turn up to office. How do we handle those kind of situations? So there are a lot of factors which are changing, which means that you have to make do with what you have. And for make do with what you have, you need people who are able to do these changes, incorporate these changes till such time we are at least getting some kind of a standard solution. For example, if you get a new material, the whole supply chain, multiple areas gets impacted. Let's say you're using material A and material A is not available for whatever reason, and material B is what you have to make do with, which means you have to create new formula cards. It means you need to modify your machines to be able to run material B. You need to be able to modify your systems to be able to test material B, release material B, all those processes that are related to materials. And lastly, you should be able to make sure that those interruptions in between, you are able to increase, decrease inventory, whatever is necessary, communicate to the entire supply chain so that everyone is aware of material B's availability and the changes that are happening in the system, and thereby whatever is the impact to the customer and consumer. Now, till such time, either we find a solution to get material A, there is a spike in effort. Everyone in the system is working on something which is non-standard for the time being. And when you want to work for this unplanned process, you need additional effort. A lot of discussion on one another topic that's happening in the world today is around mental health, right? And what is happening is all this unplanned, unscheduled work is something which is driving a lot of stress in the system. Now, organizations which went to the extreme end of lean, removing a lot of buffer from the system, no additional people or not doing the right levels of hiring, got into crises. Those who kept that bit of buffer were able to engage these resources to be able to design those new systems, modify those new systems to be able to run as per the new reality till such time that the modified system or the base system could be back in place. That is something which has come to talent, and talent not only in terms of just having the muscle power, but also the right brain power with this muscle to be able to do so. So that is one which is on the talent. Second is manufacturing excellence. Manufacturing excellence, and this I'm talking even I'm coming from a manufacturing background. Manufacturing excellence, if it is a service industry, it's a service excellence, but operational excellence is a must. And there are various, whether it is a lean program or a Six Sigma program or TPM, any of this program has to be running robustly in your organization setup so that it is ready to accept these changes. A very, very rigid system, which is not tuned to changes, will not be able to adapt fast. So manufacturing excellence assumes that the machine is in perfect condition, but the processes are working perfectly. So whenever there is an interruption, we know that, okay, if there are 5 variables, of those 4 are in control, there is only 1 variable which is changing. I need to adjust with this variable. And that, again, is a very key important foundation that needs to be in place. Third is the relationship, right? Internally, the first 2 elements are more internal in nature. The third element is more external in nature. Now, wherever you are in the supply chain, whether it is the supplier to you interaction, you with your various contract manufacturers, third-party contractors, or with your customers, those organizations which developed trust over an extended period of time were able to flow information seamlessly. As simple as, I'm going to get into a stock out. When do you inform this to your customer? If you have a level of trust, you would inform this well in advance. If you do not have the right levels of trust, you will keep it till the last date, and it could be a much more disaster, right? So again, relationship, and if any supply chain topic any supply chain course starts with relationship being the place where the maximum value is unlocked. Even from a resilience standpoint and resilience foundation standpoint, relationships are those places where organizations, they need to continue to invest and have strong relationships so that during crises, you can, it's like you have a bank balance with your partners. So you can go in and encash your, trust equity in the system to be able to run the system during times of crisis. So these are 3 elements from a foundation standpoint. I'll repeat once more. It's around talent, having that right buffer in place to handle crises, manufacturing or operational excellence to be able to keep other variables same while one of the variable is fluctuating significantly, and thirdly, great relationship with partners outside your supply chain. Now, that is the first element around foundation. The second piece which I talked about, going back to the analogy of the driver, was predicting disruptions. And I think I heard some excellent examples of predicting disruptions in the previous panel discussion that was happening. Predicting disruptions, again, could anyone have predicted the magnitude of crisis that COVID would bring? Probably no, right? But once it has come in, we have seen this in a cycle, then we know there is wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. Various organizations could use a lot of AI, a lot of predictive technologies to be able to get data from multiple sources and convert this multiple source data into some insights which can tell you what is going to happen. Now, there is a bit of range which the prediction or the forecast would give, but it would still be better than working in the dark. And one classic example is the fact that now during the pandemic there has been a lot of ports which are getting choked or congested, and because of it the lead time have at times gone 2x, 3x and so on. Mostly those coming from the US, a little lesser in Europe and China, but globally containers have got impacted. Now a mix of data available on social media, some data available on government websites, some data available with the shipping liners. If you were to get and extract all these pieces of data together, there is of course social listening softwares which are available today. You convert this data to say, okay, basis of this data, can I predict which port is going to have how much lead time for custom clearances? Now, once I know that, that will get working with what data we have inside the organization to be able to say, okay, this is the time when I'm going to go out of stock on so and so product, right? If you are able to do this prediction right, of whatever interruptions that are coming in, that gives you an advantage. That gives you an advantage to decide whether you're really wanting to put some money in promotions, whether you are going to work and the new launch plan, or you're going to delay it. Any of these things start getting impacted once you are able to predict disruptions. It needs definitely investment in technologies, in artificial intelligence, in social listening, to be able to get some of these data. Now, there is a range of disruptions that have been defined. What is applicable for your organization, you need to prioritize those disruptions. And for those disruptions, define what would be those in-process measures through which I can predict disruption for my supply chain. And I use this data to make mitigation plan to be able to avoid this. If not avoid, I think avoid is the wrong word, but minimize the impact of the disruption to my supply chain. And the last piece of the resilience element is the digitalization. Now, even if you have this information which predicts what's going to happen, how do you go about deciding what are your actions going to be? Okay? Many times, and it's true for the role that I do today, many times, even if I have the information, this information from outside needs to be tied up with multiple information. It could be information from the manufacturing shop floor. It could be information from our own transport system as far as where are my trucks, where is the material, how much is the orders coming in, how much are the open orders, and so on. A lot of pieces of information have to be combined together to be able to make some decisions, right? One very prominent technology that is that's coming up is around the whole digital twin for the supply chain. Digital twin talks about designing a virtual supply chain. It could be around your equipment, could be around your planning systems, which starts predicting that, hey, these are the steps which are possibly going wrong, or these are the various simulations that are possible. This seems to be the most probable or the most efficient system for your supply chain. And converting those, it puts certain decisions with pros and cons, not pros and cons, certain numbers together to say, I look at this digital twin, and basis of the digital twin, these are the options that have come to my mind. Basis of this option, this is what I want to take. Now, using technology, these decisions could be done in as less as 30 minutes to 60 minutes. without having the right technology, without having the right predictive systems in place, this could take like 2 days, 3 days, and so on. And by the time you are about to take the decision, the external environment could have again changed, right? So with the change happening so fast, investing in the right digitalization technologies, which will enable you to use the information available outside to be able to take faster decision at the C-suite level, I think is the third element from a resilience standpoint. Now, this information needs to be very well tied up. Again, another kind of digitization, but converting this into something we call activity-based costing, or really saying which step costs how much money, which SKU is costing how much money, and to be able to bring those decisions together to say, financially, what is the implication for me? Can I take this decision now? Can I hold this decision? Or if I take this decision, what is my exposure? Am I okay to take those exposure and so on? So that again, with the right setups and a big thing that everyone is doing, most prominent, like leading organizations are investing, is the IoT part of it. IoT, from at least manufacturing standpoint, brings in a lot of information from equipment systems, etc., which keeps telling us real time what's happening on the equipment, whether there are quality issues coming up, how much production has happened, how much losses we are making. Link this with activity-based costing and the overall information. Now, certain certain traditional systems which we have been using and we continue to use, big one being around the central ERP, the ERP systems need to be able to communicate with this advanced AI systems or machine learning systems to be able to make decisions. I think that is where we really unleash the power of digitalization. Otherwise, again, getting those pieces of information from IoT or from machine learning, but not talking to your ERP could be still a showstopper. You could still get a lot of insights, but not at the pace at which you can define your system to be resilient. Okay, so I think that is all that I am looking at covering. I'll share this once again. The three foundations that I see which are critical for us to deliver resilient supply chain. One is around foundation, which is the people and the equipment and the relationship part of it. The second is being able to predict disruptions. And the third is around digitizing the supply chain and integrating your traditional systems with AI, with machine learning, to be able to take faster decisions through various visualization tools and predictive analysis tools. Yes, Tushar.
Thank you, Mr. Datta, for taking us through key elements of building resilience. Now, I would like Nirdesh to take the session forward with the Q&A.
Yeah. Thanks, Tushar. I would request the audience to raise their hands in case they have any questions. Yeah. Anshul, can you go ahead with your question?
Thank you, Nirdesh. Good evening, Mr. Datta.
Yeah,
so you talked about three key elements which are necessary to build the resilience. But I just wanted to understand what are the parameters that we should use if we want to measure the resilience of a supply chain?
Very nice. So from a resilience measurement standpoint, see, there are two ways, at least the way I look at it. One, you can define something like agility. Agility for me is from the day the customer places an order to the time you are able to replenish the order. And this is not from your inventory, the total lead time from the day you get an order to the time you are able to supply the order. If you have done a bit of value stream mapping talks about total lead time, right? So it's about total lead time, all the lead time from the supplier at manufacturing, at transportation, and to the customer, all of this added up together. Now, an aspirational goal would be to have a total lead time in the tune of, I don't depend, again, it's a massive range for various types of industries, but having something in the range of 30 to 60 days, I think would be a good enough measure to work on. Now, what happens is the definition of the measure is only one part of the problem statement. You define resilience or agility by total lead time, but then you need to follow it up with a drumbeat process to be able to put some master plan goals to say, today I need, let's say 180 days is my total lead time. And I would want to cut this down to 60 days, or in the next 12 months, I want this 180 to become 120 days. So this transition plan, there has to be actions put in. Big ideas could be around, I want to localize this production. Today I'm getting this all the way from China. I want to get this done from India, right? Or it could be, in other cases, I'm getting this from China because this is, a lower cost option. I'll invest in a slightly higher cost option and keep some part of my business with, let's say, a more expensive option nearby, or even in China, but someone who's more reliable. So those kind of actions need to be put, and there has to be enough leadership focus to be able to, track those actions, make sure they are getting done, they are sufficiently resources funded, and so on. So those elements should be put together along with just putting the measure to be able to improve resilience over a period of time. Lastly, of course, at the end of the day, any supply chain metrics, there are simple 3 metrics. It's top line, bottom line, cash, right? So those are the metrics. As long as you do not lose these fundamentals, that's how you define business. But if you want to do it proactively, I think lead time is a very good measure to track resilience. Yes.
Ankit, you can go next.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Ankit.
Sir, my question is in continuation to your answer, what you are told to ensure that to have a agile supply chain. So, sir, how to create agile and resilient supply chain?
So, I think that's what I covered, in the slides. From an agile and resilient supply chain, from a network standpoint, first you define where your key customers are, where are your important businesses, and for these, what is the lead time you want to create. Like I believe Apple has a global vision that they would want to launch within 90 days across the whole world their product, right? So whenever iPhone 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever gets launched, within 90 days, most countries, whatever is your target countries in the world, they would want to launch it around the same time, right? Shouldn't be a big difference between a launch in the US and a launch. And today, technology is so advanced that you have a launch in the US, someone will already create a copycat in India. So that's agility. But once you have defined that agility, then it means, okay, if I have this vision, what are the elements that are needed to make it happen? So if it is 90 days, it would have different action. If it is 180 days, it would have different action. But then once you have that 90 days, it could be a combination. Again, going back to fundamentals, strong manufacturing excellence program has to be there, or operational excellence program. Lean, Six Sigma, TPM, those are the big programs which are in vogue, which have paid dividends again and again for multiple organizations. So those systems should be in place. And building on top of it is the people part of it. You have a great organization where people are adaptable, they are having that mindset to be agile, lean, and so on. So you should have invested in that kind of culture for your organization. And once you have this, then the investments, again, depending on whatever is making financial sense for you, you would want to invest in digital technologies or AI or machine learning. But this has to be continuously invested in line with your lead time aspiration. So let's say if your biggest lead time reduction, if it happens through just the supplier relationship management, that is convince your supplier that, hey, you are based out of Sri Lanka, I am based out of India. If you come to India, we will probably less get impacted, and overall it makes business sense. Then you would need to go after it and make sure that you get it done. Now, if that adds a bit of cost in the system, right? Even if it adds a bit of cost in the system because the supplier has now put up a base in India and they do not probably have the same scale they had in Sri Lanka, does it really pay out for you from a resilience standpoint? And the cost of resilience, as I mentioned, is not losing 0.5% of your bottom line, but it's losing 0.5% of share or 5% of share if the crisis hits. And the cost of 5% of share would be much larger than 0.5% of bottom line. So that balance is what needs to be created. And when you do the resilience ROI discussions, somewhere you have to at times lean forward to invest in resilience versus going for the lowest cost supplier list.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ankit. Aman, you can go next.
Yeah, hi sir. Am I audible? Good evening.
Yes, Saman.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, like, in what ways an agile supply chain is better than a conventional one?
So, agile supply chain and conventional supply chain, as I mentioned, in case of the previous definition of agile was having lowest inventory, right? We are talking more about resilience, and we are not talking just about agile supply chain. So, from a conventional supply chain, you would typically go. You could have gone again, even in traditional methods also. It's not that we were on the extreme, but a traditional supply chain might go for the lowest cost supplier, for example, or the fastest supply chain to say, I don't want to keep any inventory. But when you know you are going to have a container situation, and this is basis of the predictive tools that you implemented, if the predictive tools tell you, or the social listening tells you that, hey, the containers availability globally is going to stay for the next 6 months, it would mean that you have to invest in inventory. You would actually increase inventory. And as like basic supply chain says, when you increase inventory, you increase cost, because you have added more warehouses, you have more risk of products going, during initiatives you're left with the old product with you, which you have to scrap and so on. So it means cost by design. But you make a choice to invest in those because your predictive system tells you that, hey, there is going to be crisis. You cannot predict the amount of variability, and basic safety calculation theory says that you would want to increase your safety when there is, predicting crisis coming in. So traditional method, sometimes we just take the forecast and then basis of historical data. So it's like driving a car looking at the rear view mirror, that the past was all good. So because the past was all good, I am going to have, a very good future as well. That's not true. We take the predictive analysis part of it, and we add all the agility legs that I mentioned, and make those investments. Either it is more capacity. Again, I won't say more capacity, investing the right capacities at supplier, investing in the right inventories at your end, so that when the crisis hits, and it will hit, is what our probability or predictability tools say, we are prepared for it, and not only prepared for making sure that we deliver to our consumers, but any other consumers from our competitors who are not having their needs being met, we are able to take this opportunity to serve them as well.
Thanks, Aman. Anvesha, you can go next.
Thank you, sir, for the session. My question is, how can we build a resilient supply chain and robust supply chain? Is there any particular steps or strategy you would say that we should follow?
So again, resilient supply chain from a step standpoint, I would still go back to the foundations that I just shared. Establish great foundations in manufacturing. The measure that we talk about is, let's say, OE is overall operational efficiency is a very common measure. It talks about in reliability engineering or TPM. We need to go after it, create a system which runs at high OE. When we are running at high OE, it means that your equipment and your people are capable of handling changes, right? So that is something which would typically be the first step, and along with the other two areas, as I mentioned, on the talent part of it, and second is the relationship part of it. So that foundation has to be in place. If you do not have the foundation, then you cannot go to the next step. Once you have the foundation in place, then you are investing in all the additional tools and technologies. These tools and technologies, on one hand, are helping you, predicting challenges. And predicting challenges, when I say, it's giving you a range in which you are expected to operate. And the second side helps you take decisions by collecting information from various sources, converting them into a common, communication language, and then publishing this through various visualization tools to say, hey, this is what the data is interpreting into. Let's make one of these choices so that we can, keep the supply chain running. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anvesha. Aishwarya, you can go next.
You are on mute, Aishwarya.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask, what are the major strategies adopted to make the supply chain more resilient to external forces, especially like the pandemics?
So as I mentioned, like some of these external factors like pandemic, for sure, no one is able to predict the magnitude of the impact. The magnitude of it is something which, again, like whether the government will take a decision to do a 1-day lockdown, 1-week lockdown, 1 month, or 3 months of lockdown, we couldn't say that. But what definitely helps for sure is once we have the crisis that hits you, you would need to convert this crisis into, okay, as this crisis unfolds, what are the new data that I need to look for to be able to predict the impact of this crisis? So if I see first wave to second wave to third wave, most organizations were able to respond much better to wave 2 or much better to wave 3. So there was hardly any interruption by the time wave 3 came in, right? Now, these kind of interruptions, if we are seeing, then we should invest time to learn what were the changes that happened during the first wave, how was our business impacted, and how could we have predicted, and take those learnings and incorporate this into our own system, so that next time we foresee this coming, we already have. So something as simple as, the number of cases in a city. If I start converting the number of cases in a city to the probability of the city going in a lockdown, then I would know that I would need to, probably build up inventory with my distributors, with my retailers, as the cases are growing, because the data, like previous data says, or analytics says that yes, there is going to be a lockdown and it's going to be a big lockdown and so on. So those kind of data, it's not fundamental supply chain, like traditionally we were probably not doing that. But now given this case, we would probably do this and use that as an information which we can use to our advantage. I gave the example also on the container situation. Like if social listening says that, hey, there is a couple of these computers are, let's say, hacked, and because of this hacking, the number of computers are continuously increasing, and the port is going to go into a lockdown because a lot of accounts have been hacked. It means that there's going to be no customer clearance. Now, if you're able to predict this on time, you already start diverting your containers to another port if it is possible, or you start getting another set of supplies to another port directly, so that you are not banking on the whole consignments which are stuck at the port, which is impacted by, let's say, a ransomware or something like that. So some of these information, again, this is not predicted when the ransomware attack will happen, but it has happened in the past. If it has happened in the past, is there something? And by the way, there are a lot of organizations which are specializing into these kind of predictive tools, social listening, and so on. You can invest in some of these technologies to get that information as and when you need it, depending on, of course, how critical is that particular supply chain or that lane of a supply chain.
Now, can we have Sanjana?
Hello, sir. First of all, thanks a lot for giving such an insightful session. I just want to know, like, would you like to suggest me how P&G is making its supply chain resilient? Are there any major specific ones that they're taking care of?
Could you please repeat the question? I think the last 2 sentences I didn't get.
Sure. So you were told that P&G is like toilet paper leader in US as well. So now, are there any specific measures that P&G is taking care of that you would like to suggest me?
So like most of the stuff that I shared is something which we are doing in P&G for sure. So we are investing in, from a people standpoint, I think the crisis showed that there was a lot of variability that comes wherever there are systems which are dependent on people. So really, we have this concept of in like self-sustaining supply chain teams. So primarily it talks about a team which can run the whole plant without managerial presence on floor. This is something which we have demonstrated in many of our plants. So this is a example of foundation, which I talked about, right? It's a combination of foundation of people, foundation of machines, where we are creating these organizations which are so capable that they do not need managerial personnel present on floor to run the show. Now, this is something which we are investing in. Similarly, when I talked about predictive analysis, we are investing in tools which can predict some of these crises. The big, and again, many industries are investing in this, is the concept of control tower. The control tower again collects multiple data from multiple sources, and they will exactly tell you that, hey, this particular ship which you have one container on containing a critical raw packed material is, by the way, diverted to another port for whatever reason. So it's going to take some time. Once we have that information, then with the right visualization software, etc., it converts into, does this really impact out of stock? If it is impacting out of stock, then we are already in a position to take decision whether we need to, let's say, do an air freight or use an alternate material, and thereby trigger changes in the whole supply chain. So we are ready for it. So in P&G, I think we look at supply chain as a competitive advantage. We look at a supply chain as something which has driven significant share growth. If not growing share, it has helped us to retain share during the time of crisis, because we were ready with some of these systems well in advance, and we were again what I talked about, regional supply chains, where going with the lowest cost supplier, even if they are like somewhere really far away, those things I think we have reduced significantly even before the crisis. But we are taking it to another level altogether by making much regional or even local supply chains, which can cater to the consumer needs, and our consumer is never out of stock.
Yeah, that is really helpful. It seems that P&G is like investing a lot on digitalization and all, like maybe other consumer companies.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. But in the interest of time, we'll take the remaining questions offline and we'll collect them and send it to you for your response, if that is fine with you.
Sure. It was wonderful talking with all of you. Thanks for taking the time out on a Sunday. And if there are any questions, happy to help you guys.
Sure, sir. I would like to extend a vote of thanks before we close the session. It was interesting to receive the perspective from Mr. Shubhranshu. He started off by giving us the example of Evergreen, which we probably have seen but not analyzed it through the perspective of resilience. The interesting perspective that I found in his discussion was how he compared the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic aspects of resilience, and how the definition of resilience can also be converted into a prospect of opportunity. The indicators, the example of indicators that he gave through a resilient taxi, and also the discussion that he had about mental health these days, is what also caught my attention. So I would like to thank you, sir, for giving us a very different and a very variety of perspectives to this discussion. And we hope to have you again for future discussions at XLRI. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, XLRI team. Very happy to join session today.
Thank you, sir. And we'll have the next session from 4:45 p.m.
XLRI, we have the finest pool of professors who come from the best institutes across the world. They also offer a plethora of electives tailored to suit the academic distinctiveness of the institute. Cutting-edge pedagogy, complementing the latest industry trends.
At XLRI, we prefer learning by doing.
The journey at Excel proved to be life-changing since it provided me a winning mix of career advancement, unparalleled network, and the opportunity to constantly be surrounded by people who challenge you for the better.
Recreational and energizing.
Here at XLRI, we live by the motto excellence and integrity.
XLRI ExPGDM program facilitates peer-to-peer learning for people coming from various backgrounds. Even in my study group, I have people coming from various backgrounds like hospitality, merchant navy, automobile, and I come from consulting background.
Developing critical thinking and enhancing leadership skills.
Exhilarating and enriching 12 months experience.
At XLRI ExPGDM, we learn and prepare for the greater good of the society.
Challenging the status quo.
Driving personal and professional transformation.
At XLRI, we are nurtured to be responsible leaders for tomorrow.
Besides, to reminisce.
At XLRI, we focus on a management education framework that is integrative and offers students an opportunity to develop and pursue new ideas at the same time. We constantly evolve our curriculum in line with changing economic and social landscapes. Besides the flagship programs, XLRI has added many new executive and certificate programs over the years to meet the growing demand of various industry sectors. Our virtual interactive learning program and entrepreneurship programs are our two key offerings.
Learning at XLRI is different from the way learning happens elsewhere. One reason is because of the use of cases. We use cases to relate academic concepts with industry application.
Two dimensions that I would talk about: sustainability of our leadership, our journey in our leadership, sustainability of our careers is dependent on ethics and how we live a high ethics, high integrity life. Back in the days, before any of the other institutes started doing it, we had business ethics as a compulsory course. For me, that consonance of my own ethical framework with the institute and now my own ethical framework with my company, that served me immensely. So today when I stand and talk about ethics, it comes from this core of me. And Excel helped frame this and helped give it shape even before I knew what this was all about. And now it's who I am, it's the core of who I am.
Gave me confidence, Excel gave me purpose, and Excel gave me a lot of confidence to try different things. That's a huge set of experiences I had. And that stood me in good stead because I went to become a management trainee in Hindustan Lever, where I could never have been without the Excel ticket, and without having excelled in Excel, I wouldn't have made it to HUL. And I've been with Unilever all 25 years of my career, so clearly the move from Excel to HUL was great for me. I really think that Excel has grown from strength to strength. It's maintained its reputation. There are a number of students who continue to excel year after year and have created a community of very successful professionals in India.
I've gone on to sell disposable diapers to Indians. Don't even throw away.
Hi, good evening everyone. So this is the third panel discussion for the day, and in this we will deliberate on the topic: will sustainability bind leaders, customers and investors to seek long-term value? Among the panelists today we have Mr. Neeraj Ambani. Mr. Neeraj is the Group President Supply Chain at Reliance Industries Limited. He has completed his Bachelor of Science from Babson College, Wellesley, USA. Previously, Mr. Neeraj was associated with Tower Capital and Securities Private Limited as Executive Director. At Reliance, he was given opportunities to start up two businesses, one in telematics for Reliance Infocom and the second one in Reliance Logistics as a separate business initiative. He also developed the logistic function from business planning, execution and rollout, and set up the people, process and technology for the business. In a short period of time, he developed India's largest organized logistics company. He also assisted the group in the business transformation of the hydrocarbon logistics, managing the largest global SAP logistics system implementation. Mr. Neeraj led the setup and development of the supply chain for the group's foray into the telecom, namely Jio, leading the integrated supply chain for the group's consumer business oriented towards new commerce. We welcome you at ClockSpeed, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Nishit Rastogi. Mr. Nishit is the co-founder and chief executive officer at Locus. Nishit drives business strategy and innovation at the company and is responsible for business expansion across geographies and head operations globally. Prior to founding Locus, he worked with Amazon, where he built algorithm to counter credit card fraud. Nishit also co-founded RideSafe, a real-time route deviation detection application for women's safety. He's a published author in the field of experimental physics and holds patents at machine learning. Nishit has a bachelor degree in the electronics and master's in economics from BITS Pilani and was profiled by Forbes Asia as the 30 under 30 2018 list, and also Fortune India in the 40 under 40 list. Welcome at ClockSpeed, sir. Our third panelist is Mr. Pradeep Jadhav. Mr. Pradeep is the co-founder at ThowCentric, a business and technology consulting company where he leads business applications and digital commerce practices. Pradeep is a business leader with a vast experience in leading business transformation programs. He began his career as a supply chain technology consultant, and over the years, he worked on large-scale technology transformation programs with many leading global MNCs. He has engaged with and consulted clients in across international geographies, including US, Europe, China, and Australia. Pradeep has built specialized consulting practices ground up in large as well as small boutique consulting organizations. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Mr. Saibal Kumar Nag, who is the Assistant Vice President of Supply Chain Modernization at Bennett Coleman and Company Limited, which is under Times Group. Mr. Saibal has done his engineering from Indian Institute of Engineering Science and Technology, West Bengal, MBA from IIM Indore, Project Management from IIM Ahmedabad, and General Management from ISB Hyderabad. He is also approved valuer, chartered engineer, and life member of Indian Council Arbitration. He is also a certified energy manager under the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Government of India. In addition, he has also been conferred with Green Building Auditor certification by IGBC and became an accredited person of IGBC and ASSOCHAM GEM and a well-certified auditor too. Mr. Saibal brings in over 34 years of rich project implementation and management experience and has served many organizations like Simplex Infrastructure Limited over 16 years, Ispat Industries Limited, Dolby NCC Limited Mumbai, and finally at Bennett Coleman Company Limited. His experience includes end-to-end monitoring and coordination with multiple stakeholders in the ecosystem of industrial buildings, academic campuses, residential townships, housing colonies, roads, bridges, metro rail networks, and also the editorial setup of Times of India, Radio Mirchi, Times Now TV studios, and Times Pro Modern Learning Centers. Welcome to ClockSpeed, sir. Finally, our moderator for the session will be Dr. Abhishek Chakrabarti. Dr. Abhishek has been teaching at XLRI Jamshedpur since 2014 in the Department of Production Operations and Decision Sciences. Prior to joining XLRI, he did his doctorate from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. He has also worked as a business consultant with JTA, the supply chain company, now known as Blue Yonder. His areas of interest include supply chain management and business analytics. Welcome, Abhishek, sir, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Manish, for the introduction. So I think without wasting much time, we can straight away proceed with the discussion. Right. Yes, so sir. What we will do is, before we straight away start asking the questions, we will just get an overview as to what the panelists think about sustainability. Right. And then we can go ahead with the specific questions. Is it okay?
Absolutely.
Oh. So, I mean, let's start with Pradeep. What do you think is, why sustainability is so important nowadays? Or what will happen if we don't consider sustainability as an important objective for any organization?
Right, great. Firstly, thank you so much for having me in this panel discussion. Really glad to share the stage with so many industry leaders here. And I've been hearing some of these sessions since morning. Really, really well done to all of you who have organized this event. So sustainability is a hot topic today for all the right reasons. And just the fact that you have a full day of sessions for it is also proof that it is a hot topic. So, we are seeing the devastating impacts of ignoring the planet, ignoring sustainability, through events like natural disasters and, community agitations, and other such events which impact businesses and community in general. For us, this generation, we will see the extreme impacts of such events in our lifetimes now. It is no longer, leaving the planet in good shape for the next generation. Especially the young folks, which is the bulk of the people on this in this event now who are participating in this event. For us, for them, for the young generation, they will see the impact in their lifetime. And so, to me, the younger generation, has to take up sustainability in a really big way because that is going to impact them, their working life, their professional life, and their personal life as they as they grow. So the fact that so many governments across the world, UN, and a lot of these international bodies are now creating rules, regulations, and targets around sustainability is also very is a proof that it is becoming very, very critical, right? But the important thing here is that while these rules, regulations, targets are being created, businesses will need to rise much beyond just trying to meet the regulations. And businesses will have to make sustainability as a key part of their strategy, as a key part of their sustenance, right? And just to merge it onto supply chain, supply chain is a very key element in the whole execution strategy for businesses to remain sustainable or impact sustainability in a big way, right from procurement to manufacturing to warehousing and distribution. Supply chain can impact a lot of the execution capabilities of businesses in the sustainability space, right? Just the only additional point I would just want to make before I leave off is sustainability cannot be looked at, for example, how CSR was looked at as a part of something that they need to comply to, an additional part of their business, right? They should be looking at integrating sustainability as their overall in their overall strategy, and that will make sure that businesses impact sustainability in a big way for themselves, for the community, for the people, and overall for the planet. So that's just a very brief thought that I had to start with on this topic.
Thanks, Prit. Let us now have the opinion of Mr. Neeraj Ambani on the same issue.
So thank you, Professor Chakravarti. And I think, what Pradeep just said is very, very true. And in some ways I'll be picking on from there. See, first and foremost, I feel is sustainability is not an intent or an execution issue. It's a design issue. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that unless you look at it as a part of designing, whether it's you designing your business, designing your processes, designing your infrastructure, it's eventually, that's the only way to institutionalize any kind of change or any kind of improvement when it becomes a way of life. And what do I mean by design? Design is specifically, I would put it in at least 4 areas which I feel are the high important areas. One is your design of your packaging, transport, energy, and capex build in a supply chain. I'm specifically speaking, these are specific aspects. That means if you are designing a packaging which cannot be recycled, then you are starting off on a wrong footing. Same way in a transport, if you are not planning to create a transport system which is energy efficient, then you are again starting on a wrong footing. If you're not looking at saying that, okay, energy sources, which kind of energy sources are you going to eventually invest in, or how you're going to use, even just energy savings per se is an important element in it. Your capex build, how much are you using sustainable materials, which you can get into the capex build. Second element is your network design itself. So if you do not have an efficient network design to move your product from manufacturing or source to consuming, you eventually will have a higher carbon footprint. If you use, in your network design, you use smaller multiple trucks, you're going to have a higher carbon footprint, etc., etc. So your network design of your supply chain is equally important to completely change this. And this is a network design, please, let's be clear, it's not a one-time exercise, it's a continuous exercise. Even design, what I said earlier, was important. Another area which I look at is your product packaging. What is the end of use approach after you use the packaging? That means, are you going to pick it up back from customer? Are you going to have collection points to pick up that? How are you going to ensure that that packaging which you put into the system is going to go back to a recycle aspect. So if we don't own that, then that nobody will own. And yes, you will have customers which are conscious and will do it, but that's not really the approach. You have to facilitate that. And the last part is the way you do waste management. I think, as you know, waste management has really matured a lot in the last few years, where you have actually certified agencies, you have agencies which are actually doing waste management or waste fills, etc. How are you ensuring that even the waste which is generated in your supply chain is actually reaching the right waste processors and actually getting processed in the right way? And more importantly, should it be just waste processing? Why not take that back into your packaging design and say, okay, over a period of time, we create a circular economy, and taking that back into saying that, okay, fine, with recycled content, I'll keep on increasing my packaging and thereby starting dipping less and less to the environment. So these are, a couple of points I had. And I'm just to conclude when I say that, design, when one does this, it's a design basis issue. It's you're actually changing your core design basis, and therefore the implementation and therefore the impact always can be 100% of your scope. That means, just taking Pradeep's point earlier, if it is a side initiative, it will always have a part implementation or a part scope. What is really important is saying that, okay, from tomorrow I'm going to do it in this way. And that's the only way when you can say whatever the scope is, you have actually implemented it. So I think these are just a couple of opening points I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Ambani. Now, I would like to have Mr. Saibal Nag to share his views on the sustainability.
Yeah, at first, let me thank all of XLRI team and responsible for this such a wonderful program on the burning topic, which is spreading entire world. And this program especially, it will make me frog out of the well, rather than I'm making somebody else known about it. But I want to learn many things from you guys through your speeches and questions. And I wish all the budding leaders a bright future ahead. Of course, they will lead this business process in future. So sustainability kind of importance what we have in today's business is enormous. So that is no doubt. But we cannot leave our present days by borrowing from future. That should be understood. Because sustainability is, we cannot kill our current resources, which are to be protected for the future generation. So more than corporate business agenda, business leaders have enormous corporate social responsibility towards our Mother Earth. And that is paramount. And that is where the journey of sustainability begins. Now, let me come to the point. Supply chain is not a transporting media. It's a tool to connect the organization with its high side and the low side participants. It can communicate, it can speak seamlessly with its bigger stakeholder on either side, because that is the only thing which connects the entire organization from its back end as well as the front end. So when we talk about supply chain is the blood in the system, which is routed through this process. Now let me go to the logistic part. There are two parts in the logistic. Mainly in business, we always talk about the forward logistic. Nobody talk about the reverse logistic. Reverse logistic, which if it is taken care, then only the sustainability can be implemented in a robust manner. Because if you see, such for an example, that the tire manufacturer, they spend more on reverse logistic than forward logistic, because they are already following the sustainable practice since long. But other industries like this, another way, let's say we are all using, for an example, we are all using that single-use plastic bottle, like I'm also using here. See, this is a single-use plastic bottle. Instead of single-use plastic bottle, if the bottle is multiple use, so then plastic load automatically it will come down. So there are many things which supply chain can bring into the system, and supply chain basically it has a enormous reach into the mass media. And who is your brand ambassador? Your consumer and your customer is your brand ambassador. Suppose you are packaging something instead of plastic package, if you are packaging something in a cloth bag, which you can reuse as your marketing time or something like to carry in a multi-purpose use. So naturally, in your supply chain design, as Mr. Ambani says, it's a process of design. So I would start saying from the the famous Hindi picture dialogue, The Three Idiots. Success ka piche mat bhago, perfection ka piche bhago, success automatically it will follow. Like that, don't be after sustainability. You create your design. What Mr. Ambani said, I will go along with you. You create your design with parameter. Forget about sustainability. You first create your design. So your sustainability automatically it will fall in its place. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Nag. So I think we are in a position to start with the specific questions. So I have a set of 10 questions. So what I will do, I will pick up each of the questions and ask individual speakers. Right? So the first question is, how does sustainability create value for leaders, customers, and investors? Now, may I have the opinion of Mr. Jadhav on this?
Great. Thanks, Professor Abhishek. Okay, so it's the three stakeholders you've mentioned. So I'll try to keep the answer short, but it's quite a long answer. So for let's say you take the first stakeholder that you mentioned, right? Leaders, right? What is the job of the leader, right? To build the business which is sustainable, which can grow, not just grow, but also thrive, and not just in the next 1 to 3 years, but over 10 years, 20 years in the long term, right? So what's happening today is because sustainability has become so important, right? A lot of different stakeholders are now looking at businesses to to align with their own value systems, right? If you take the second stakeholder that you mentioned, right, the customers, right? So today, customers are conscious of the environmental footprint that they are leaving behind based on what they are buying in terms of products or services from the businesses, right? So since they are now aware of it, they can make some lifestyle changes to reduce their carbon footprint, but then they also realize that a large part of it actually resides with the businesses that they deal with, of whose consumers they are, right? So customers are also looking at businesses who mirror their value system, who also care for the environment and for the sustainability. So for the leaders, then it is very, very important to look at ways to connect with the customers, to make sure that customers understand their sustainability initiatives, how they are impacting environment, etc. Right? So keeping an eye on sustainability can help leaders build a business which is sustainable. They could also look at, for example, how to design products. Right? Designing products needs raw materials, which today may be available abundantly, but are very quickly depleting. Right? So looking at the long term, looking at sustainability, can the product be redesigned so that or the manufacturing process of the product be redesigned so that not just today, tomorrow, but even 10 years down the line, the raw materials needed are still available, right? And not just available, they're still available at the right price at which the customers could still afford to buy that product and service, right? So for leaders, looking at sustainability, ensuring sustainability is a part of their agenda can help connect with their customers, and of course with the investors also, because investors are also now looking at businesses which have sustainability as their key agenda, right? So from an investor's perspective, there have been studies recently which prove that organizations which look at sustainability as a key part of their strategy actually have have better financials over time. Like, may not be in the short term, but over the long term, they end up having better financials, right? So which results in better returns for the shareholders or the investors, right? So even for investors, trying to look at businesses which focus on sustainability is again a value creating opportunity for them, right? So in that sense, for leaders, customers, as well as investors, looking at sustainability is very, very important.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Jadhav. The second question is, why is sustainability a priority for business success? Now, may I ask Mr. Ambani? to speak on this.
Yeah. So, if you look at the entire aspect of, whether it is the business, whether it is the vendor, whether it is any stakeholder, there is a capex reinvestment cycle which always happens. Second aspect you have to keep in mind, technology always changes. Technology always improves. And third point which we need to keep in mind is when we say sustainability, what it actually means is a reduction in the core resources you're using. When you combine all these three elements, I am fully convinced that moving to sustainability is a reduction of life cycle cost. Okay, so that is the first premise which I look at it. That means while doing good for the environment, while doing the right thing for the customer and stakeholders, one has to. Now, when I say reinvestment cycle, I'll just give you an example of trucking. Okay, and one will understand exactly. If you look at average trucking price, the way you look at trucking is that 50% of the vehicles are EMI paying, 50% are not. What it also means is that every year 10 to 15% of the trucks are getting replaced. Okay, which means that if you can support the vendors, guide them through the right technologies, you can actually be replacing 10 to 15% in the progressive sustainable technology every year. And in 5 years, you would have already reached 50% without 1 rupee additional, without actually trying to change the course of how the industry does recapitalization. Now, if you take that into industry, if you take that across the board, including even a normal shopkeeper investing into his assets, that's really why you need to really do. So if you need to build that into your thing, that yes, you will do the right thing and you will also reduce cost. Now, only point which I just want to highlight again is when I say cost, I mean life cycle cost. Okay, I think that's a very important point. The problem is if we go into a very short-term approach, you will never make that step. And that is the one challenge which always happens. And the challenge is greater for the ones which are smaller businesses with smaller lower cash flows than larger businesses which have these sustainers to go for long-term decisions. So I think that's why I think is we should really, as businesses, drive it. Yes, I think it is, all the other elements, it is good to do, it is good for environment, is very good. But I personally believe with the fact that resource reduction is the core of sustainability, you can do it with cost reduction.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ambani. My third question is to Mr. Nag. What are some of the biggest challenges when companies are committed to sustainability?
See, sustainability has two types of challenges. Suppose from which end you are trying to achieve. Suppose you are trying to achieve sustainability first, and through sustainability you want to make your company or the process sustainability compliant, which will build the ecosystem, which is a conducive ecosystem, which will bring empathy, and your business family boundary will grow and you will have more sustainable product. Then it is a philosophical problem and it is strategical problem. It's a top-driven approach. It's a change management problem. But suppose you are trying to achieve the process set right through design, then your problem is your cost is a challenge, your capex is a challenge, and your life cycle calculation, what Mr. Ambani is saying, it's actually correct. Because initially in short term, the cost may be apparently looking very high. But in long run, this is going to be a cheaper solution, and you will fall in a process through which, like let us say, like CSR. CSR has become a compliance tool. It is never a objective through which CSR was originally created. CSR was originally created for the nature. The company who is doing business, making profit, should give back to the society. That was the concept of CSR. And 2% of the profit should go as we should spend for CSR and all that. But now CSR has become a tool, just a compliance tool. If you have done CSR, yes, just tick that thing. And so sustainability cannot be a compliance tool. It should be in your blood. But when it should come in your blood. The process should be designed such that without knowing, that is like complex thing to be make simplified. So if your process is such that, automatically sustainability will follow. So if your approach is from one end, then it is a strategic problem. If there is a change management problem, there's a behavioral problem, employee change. Like if I say, let's say there's a good example. Now, Air India changing, now it's a question for the complete audience, whether changing Air India to Vistara is easier or changing Vistara to Air India is easier. So it can well be understood, Air India can never be in the system of Vistara, but Vistara can be made into the Air India system. So in which way you are approaching? So change management is a problem for sustainability at this stage for the old organization. For the new organization, the design, if this from the day one it is set right, then no problem, then sustainability will not have any challenge.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nag.
So, Professor, can I just add a couple
Yes,
of
yes, yes.
points? I think very well summarized by Mr. Nag, and very, very relevant points there. Just maybe a couple of points I may add here based on the experiences as a consultant when I meet organizations, right? Like one challenge I see organizations trying to take on initiatives for sustainability is with the business case. They have a mandate to, let's say use IoT to in their factories to whatever improve efficiency or reduce some cost, right? And now they are looking at building a business case, and they struggle with that to come up with the return on investment for the business case.
Yeah.
And I think there a lot of the organizations are missing the point where they're creating the business cases in the traditional ways. Yeah, this is the cost, this is the expense, and this is the benefit. I think sustainability, as I think we have discussed in just 10 minutes, so many points have come up, right? It's a long-term game that can have much more significant impact than just looking at the immediate cost and the reduction in cost and the benefits that will come out of it, right? So organizations will need to come out of that and look at it in a much larger way. If you are reducing usage of water in your manufacturing process through using technology, it's not just the cost of water that is being reduced. It is also having an impact on the community, and that can have a much larger impact on your overall brand connect with the customers, right? So that I think is one challenge that organizations are facing, and I'm sure they'll come out of it. But currently, I see that as one thing that is still there. And then second thing, I think the mindset of people, we still think that doing a sustainability initiative means an additional cost, right? And the traditional KPIs of people still exists. So unless these KPIs are redesigned or redefined, people will continue to look at it as an additional cost, and hence the business case that they're creating will continue to be in the same way, right? And one last one is I think a genuine challenge. Established companies have established supply chains, processes, etc. So now trying to change that is always a challenge, whether it's, even if it's not for sustainability, just a simple technology initiative that an organization takes up involves a lot of change management. So that is probably, those are three additional challenges I would say in going ahead with sustainability initiatives on an execution front.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Yadav. So again, continuing with the same issue of compliance, try to have a compliance to bring in sustainability. I think if you look at the state of California and the in the transportation sector, the state of California introduced a cap and trade policy called ZEV, so as to push for the electric vehicles. And then now they are rethinking of the same policy. I mean, can they bring in some alternative policies? So I mean, yeah, you are perfectly right that these compliances towards sustainability, they may work in the short run, but may not work in the long run. So continuing in the same direction, the fourth question is that what are some primary obstacles to implementing sustainable initiatives and strategies to overcome these obstacles? May I have the opinion of Mr. Ambani on this?
So I think is one of the, one or two points have already been mentioned. It's the mindset of or the design element. We've said also about the mindset of how KPIs are looked. I think we've already covered a couple of them.
Yes.
But if you really fundamentally, look at sustainability, I think it is not a job of one department. I think that's in my mind, the biggest bottleneck which is there in organizations, right? That means each and every person in the organization has his role cut out to make the overall organization, chain, business, operating model, whatever word you put, in terms of sustainable. So whether it is your engineering team, whether it is your procurement team, whether it's your build organization, whether it is your operate organization, or whether it's your sales organization, right? So I mean, wherever you look at it, I think the core point is how do you really make each and every unique job role actually play that. Now, yes, while that theoretically sounds good, it may practically not happen, but in reality, it lays at a unique, at the leadership level, So I think the core point is, I always believe initiatives or drives or, can happen top down, but innovation has to happen bottom up, right? So I think we need to have both. Kind of push from the top, saying that, yes, this is where we need to go. This is what we want to do. These are some of the ideas, present some good, innovative ideas on the table of what we can do, and some large measures, maybe as leaders, people can take to give the demonstration to their organization, have a very strong communication system. Because many times these things get lost in one speech of a leader in a year kind of, and not really get percolated down. So is it actually getting percolated into monthly discussions? It is getting into weekly discussions. And another aspect to overcome the bottleneck is that, you need to have ideation, from the bottom. So like, say, for example, a kind of competitive approach or just innovation capturing or funneling approach, which actually starts from the bottom, where people are encouraged to use, maybe, I mean, they can take ideas from the competition, from other stakeholders, other industries, and keep on proposing. But we need a formal process in an organization to filter those ideas and convert them into actionable projects. So once you do that, you will automatically see traction. So I think I would want to focus more on that rather than the obstacle, because obstacle in my mind is going to be in the mind. And we need to channelize that into a kind of workflow by which, everybody feels involved and everybody starts contributing ideas. Automatically, you will see a change.
So if I have to summarize this, it's a combination of people, processes, and tools, which have to act in tandem in order to bring in sustainability.
Yes, but it is to get, you need to actually invigorate everybody in the bottom part of the organization, because this is, good statements can be made by leaders, but, they don't really get, translated into action. So we need action to make sustainability true.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mal. Now, we often talk about sustainability, but a question that always remains unanswered: whether sustainability is creating any business value. So my question is to Mr. Jadhav.
Okay, so, I think we will probably rephrase some of the points that we have mentioned. So, for business to exist in the long term, right, they need to be able to connect with the community, with the customers, and the customers will need to be emotionally attached to the brands and to the organization, right? Today's customers are looking for ways to reduce their carbon footprint while still not really stopping their consumption of goods and services, right? So they are looking to seek align with businesses that will help them reduce their carbon footprint, right? So if a business, an organization explicitly and very strongly supports sustainability of the environment, right? A lot of customers will get emotionally attached to that value system, right? And over time, and there have been some studies which say that, but how much of it is actually true is something that will play out. But customers are ready to pay more if they are aware that the business is very strongly into sustainability, right? How much more, how much premium is a question mark. That's also another question, whether really need to charge more because you focus on sustainability. Probably you need to incorporate, a business needs to incorporate into their DNA and not really make it as an additional cost. But for these reasons, I think sustainability is creating value for the businesses, for them to survive over the long term.
Thank you, Mr. So, I mean, in continuation with the same topic, same question. So, how exactly customers perceive the importance of sustainability, as well as how exactly sustainability can contribute to customer satisfaction? So, I'm clubbing these two questions together. And question to Mr. Nag.
Yeah, first I will get into your question a bit later. Just I want to tell you one thing. Customer, they are the biggest chunk in total stakeholder. They are also actually investor. I would rate them as an investor, because customer also investing their life, their money, their time on your service and product. Let's say you are a company, you are producing something sustainable product. Now, why I should invest in your product? Because if you are not taking care of me through your product, which is really sustainable and it will contribute to the Mother Earth, that message has to go. Now, here is the role of a supply chain total ecosystem. The supply chain from one end to the other end, and its network into the total geography is enormous. So now coming to the point, when you do carpet bombing, it is easy if you are doing it through the customers. They will be your brand ambassador. Now, how do you influence them into your sustainable product? You have to first convince them that this product is better. Let's say if there is I am paying something more, but that should have some value, adding value to the customer. Like say, as I have given one few minutes back, I have given the same example. I'm again giving you. Plastic bottle multiple use can do many service in my hometown. And again, newspaper. Let's say newspaper. I'm using this. What is the use of a newspaper? You are not only reading the newspaper. Suppose if I am stopped giving you the newspaper, it is only coming in e-media. You will find out that newspaper is selling. You will getting West newspaper at 37 rupees a kilo in the market. So use of newspaper, secondary use or tertiary use is very important. So that kind of product we have to create to sustainability, which will add value to the customer use. And India is a country of jugaad. We know many things which the customer will use your product in something else which you have never thought of. So there is some kind of value addition we have to bring in my products, through which I will gain popularity. And yes, there is a challenge in short term. I do agree there will be a challenge in short term, like our body does not accept a new kidney. There will be ejection from the body. Our whole architecture will eject. That will not accept our new kidney. But slowly through medicine, it has to be inhabited in our body. So like that, any sustainable product, initially there will be a lot of repercussion in the market that will not be accepted. And the standard product will have, like China product, will have more influence on the customer. But that behavioral change has to come, and it will come. The moment the message will go to the total ecosystem that this product is beneficial, then automatically sustainable product will be in the market. And more rupees per rupee, that theory has to go now for some time, because that is the problem. What Neeraj is telling, that Pradeep is telling, that main bottleneck is our top leadership. They don't want to spend more initially, but we have to convince them that with this sustainable product, you will have more reachability will be more into the market. So that is how it will influence. So now adding value to the customer, how we add primary product, secondary use and tertiary use. That should be our design. It should be in the design. So what Neeraj is telling from the beginning, the design is the key thing which has to be brought into sustainability. If you are telling sustainability, it will be we are abusing the word sustainability. We cannot use the word misuse name. Actually, we are abusing the word sustainability. It is too much used by the business house. Without knowing the subject sustainability, they are, and to be very frank, Pradeep will confirm, in the market, you don't get a good consultant who can guide you on sustainability. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nag. My next question is to Mr. Ambani. Now, suppose if these businesses ended up going green, how exactly the customers are going to be impacted, both positively as well as negatively?
So firstly, I want to present one thing is that a customer in today 2022 or onwards, firstly is more knowledgeable, more aware of every aspect of the life, product, usage, etc., after use, etc. So I think this is the first point which we need to keep in mind, that we have a much more intelligent, aware customer who at the, at a fraction of a second can figure out every aspect of it before he makes his purchase. Second aspect is that he really, understands very well, that what is really true sustainability and what is not. Like, I mean, if you just take this entire thing of organic food, people have realized, okay, what is really organic food, what is not organic food, etc., etc. So I personally believe, that customers are much more aware. Customers will take those right decisions, and the best way they can vote is by buying or not buying a product, or buying or not buying a service. And I think there is nothing more than that, in the sense that you have to ensure that your communication to your customers is adequate. It's not, when I say communication, only in terms of advertisements which are very expensive, or just this thing. Yes, you can use packaging, you can use your channel itself to educate the customer, to explain why you're doing that, what is it that you're really doing. And eventually, what does the customer want? The customer wants to be a co-owner to this entire journey. See, I think this is the fundamental change which the customer is not saying, okay, aapka responsibility. It wants to be a co-owner, co-participant, and a co-leader in this entire change. And I think that recognition itself has to change the way we treat a customer. And this is what Mr. Nag just now is trying to say. Okay, it's a fundamental change which has happened. So I would say is that, let the customer decide. And as the trends have to be captured, have to be analyzed, what is the customer really gearing towards? What is he trying to choose towards? But it is very important that we do not, or we rather communicate transparently to our customer. Because if we are, half information can be very dangerous. And then tomorrow you may actually get a very positive customer response when they find out the real truth. You will have a really big backlash, and that could be a image issue, a brand recognition issue, and that will be devastating. So I think one has to understand the power of the customer and the vote capacity of the customer. I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried to cover.
It definitely answers my question.
Just to add to Mr. Ambani's point, really well said. Customers today want to be part or co-own this. I think just to add to that, they want the power of that decision making with them, right? They want to they want businesses to let them also decide how green they themselves want to be. And a very simple example, which Amazon does, right? It gives the customer the option. Do you want all your shipments to be combined and get it only on one particular day? It may be 5 days away versus getting it tomorrow in a single shipment, right? I, as a customer, then decide, how much I want to contribute to sustainability by choosing the right option. So they really want the power of the decision making also with them. So just wanted to add to that, to the point that Mr. Ambani just made.
Thanks, Mr. Jadhav. So again, just to continue with what you are saying, often what happens, these sustainable products come at a higher price. Even though customers want to be a part of this journey, but the high price of the products could act as a deterrent for them. Again, if I look at the transportation sector, the electric vehicles are often priced at a higher level. I mean, the price range could be 16 to 30%. But then there is also a role to be played by the policymakers, so that customers don't get away from, even if they want to be a part of the sustainable journey. So do you also think a role of these policymakers so as to bring customers on the same platform so that they also start contributing towards sustainability?
I think yes and no. I think a great example that Mr. Mani just mentioned, right? Organic vegetables, when I buy, they're always expensive, right? And sometimes I myself, I'm able to justify to myself that yes, there are reasons why it should be expensive, but sometimes I also feel, why, right? So typically, in a similar vein, I think you're saying, as sustainable businesses, will they charge a premium, and will customers be able to absorb that premium, right? Policies can do a few things. I think it is the businesses which will have to again refocus, and many times it's about a matter of refocusing their R&D energies and budgets with sustainability in mind, rather than saying that, okay, an additional budget for researching on sustainability, right? If it becomes part of a way of working, right, then the premium that needs to be charged probably will not be there, right? So policies, I don't know whether you can make policies for customers, but yes, you can give some SOPs to the industries and stuff. But I think businesses will have to figure it out and make sure that these additional whatever sustainability driven products and services do not really need to be charged a premium to the customers.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I would want to add on that. See, I think this government has actually shown us the path of how policy can be used effectively. See, I think if you look at policy can be used in two ways. One is by just doling out subsidies, okay? But that's not a sustainable policy itself, right? So, I mean, when we're talking about sustainability, that itself is a policy which is not sustainable. Okay, so what is a sustainable, and where the government really has a role is trying to either expand the market, to allow new technologies, and to build businesses of scale, which by itself reduce the cost and create the economics. And I think there are so many ways in which, whether it's on infrastructure and PM Gati Shakti, whether it's the PLI scheme, there are multiple elements which policies are coming out, which are actually saying that if you have the right technology and you have the right business plan, you can build scale in this country. I don't think anybody denies the fact of how large India is as a market. And therefore, I think the way policy as well as investment has to go through is to create scale and fundamentally cutting costs and making it more viable, and not on the subsidy route, which as a country, I think we are trying to get out.
Yeah, true. I mean, for example, there has been a reduction in the tariffs of importing lithium ions, which drives electric mobility. So it is not just only providing subsidy to the consumers who will be buying these vehicles. In addition to that, there is also this reduction in tariff, and also this PLI scheme, which you just now talked about, which could also incentivize the battery manufacturers to go for higher range. So yeah, thanks, Mr. Ambani. So my next question is to Mr. Nag, that do investors really care about sustainability?
I will answer this question with an example of ITC share market result.
Yes.
Why ITC market is not, share price is not going up. Investors do care for the sustainability. Since it's a tobacco company, the main manufacturing is tobacco product. So that is why the market is, they balance it, the 3P concept. So it's not getting into it. So yes, investors do care for this sustainable approach and this balance it, the triple bottom line balance it, what the concept is now in the market is making a dent into their balance sheet. So yes, investors do care for this. Now, suppose I have an option to invest in a company which is doing well today, but tomorrow, because of sustainability, they may lose the business. So naturally, again, let us go back to the electric vehicle once again. Why electric vehicle 3 years back and electric vehicle today? The cost, forget about the cost. Now, what is the economics of the mileage? It is 1 rupee per kilometer. Even I am driving a car every day 70 kilometers and I'm spending on diesel. So if you look at your at the end of the day, your expense, it is ultimately giving you benefit. So it is adding benefit to you, means you will always go for a little bit more investment in the initial. So there may be initial investment, that again the capex part is coming. So I am making an investment to a sustainable product to get benefited in the long run. So investor will invest into a product which is sustainable and it will give him mileage and he can leverage the investment in a long run, not in short term. So short term window sustainability is a very narrow, it is very unprofitable. But forgetting all these things, if you see a long wider horizon in a long term perspective, it's a worth investment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nag. So let's come to the last question. And this question is to Mr. Ambani. Now, often firms invest in sustainable business practices. But then, if I keep aside the case of compliances, regulations, etc., there has to be a business objective. Now, what do you think could be this sustainable investment objective for the businesses?
See, I think is, I just want to give one context is that, carrying on from the last question into this question, there is investors are pushing, customers are pushing, and now companies have taken, all their ESG priorities into consideration when making their 5-year plans, 3-year plans, etc. Right? So I think is those goals are becoming a part of the, specifically with regards to what their companies, and therefore in practical sense, I am actually seeing those companies. So I think the reward part we will come to later, but the reward part is more about investors first trying to look at ESG, 100% ESG companies vis-a-vis those who are implementing ESG as a part of the process, because that awareness and transparency is still not there, across the world. I mean, it's not about anywhere. But so my view is very clear. The customers are already, companies are taking that as a part of the plan. Now, either, as I said earlier, it is for cost reduction. Either it is for waste reduction and creating, either goals, etc. and this thing. Either it is to win over the customers. But I personally don't see too much of a doubt now. I think is in 2022 onwards, and those who have made long-term plans, I think most companies are taking these into their planning goals. I am not really seeing that, but specific aspects which I see are, one is cost, one is resource reduction, one is recycling, circular economy, etc., etc. So I think each, and this is also very difficult to generalize, because like say a steel industry could be looking at power and green steel, for example, and another company will be looking at a packaging reduction. So I think it cannot be anything specific which can be generalized, but I do see that those their companies are looking at it. Either some of them are looking at it more from a valuation point of view, saying that we want a ESG stamp. Some are looking at it to win over the customers, and some are looking at it for cost reduction. I would say everything would generalize into these three areas.
Yeah. So, other panelists, would they like to contribute to this question?
No, it is quite complete.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like to thank all the panelists for answering all these questions. Now I can open the floor for other questions from the participants. So either you can raise your hands or you can even drop the questions on the chat window. So there is one particular question that has already been dropped onto the chat window. The question is by Rashmi Ranjan Mohab. The question is that sustainability, whether it is a top-driven approach or a cultural transformation.
I think during the course of the discussion, this we have already mentioned.
Yes.
You are in which way you are approaching the subject.
Yes, true. So do we have any other question from the audience? Yeah, I could see one hand raised. Yes, Akash. Akash, you are muted. Kindly unmute yourself.
Hi. First of all, thank you to Ambani sir, Jadhav sir, and Nag sir for the great insights on the how sustainability, how it matters to the investors, and multiple questions asked by Professor Chakrabarti. My question is basically, first I'll phrase an example, then I'll ask the question. So we all are talking about the circular supply chains from very long time. I have been in automotive industry for almost 6 years, and we are talking about circular supply chain, how in automobile OEMs, they should take parts from tier 1 suppliers, which should be a returnable supply chain. But my point is, when you operate a returnable supply chain model, whatever you have bring in from the tier 1 suppliers or your tier 2 suppliers, it should again be collected and will go back. So again, when you are picking it up and sending it back to the supplier, it involves a reverse logistics also. Reverse logistics itself is consumption of, you're using the petrol and sending it back. So that is also addition in, the carbon footprint is added. So when we say circular supply chain, don't we think that pooling is the right fit for that? That whatever you're sending from A to B, you should have a supply chain model that you will have a network of suppliers or your customers, that it should be used in B itself, not again it should be that it would be coming back from B to A. Anyone can answer this.
So
Ambani sir, you can take
let
that.
me take a shot at it. So when we take a transport and reverse logistics, there is your three legs: primary, mid mile, last mile. Okay. Yes. Generally, what happens is the last mile generally should be a zero cost reverse logistics in this situation, because the truck which is carrying itself should be bringing it back to that same hub. Okay, so one of the issues which I always see in reverse logistics is we don't use the network design of the forward for the reverse. So if you do that, some of the cost and some of the wastage, because eventually the truck is coming back to that hub carrying air only. So that is one issue. So you have to see, because generally in the last mile and sometimes even in mid mile, there is a one-way movement and the truck is coming back empty. So my personal view is, if you marry the reverse logistics onto the same hub as the forward, you can actually try to cut cost. If you can do that both in the mid mile and last mile. What do I mean by mid mile? Is that, say, if you're your manufacturing of the component is in let's say Gurgaon, and your production and is in, let's say, Pune, and so primary would be the Gurgaon to Pune, okay, or Gurgaon to maybe Bombay, and at the regional location, Bombay to Pune, Pune to the factory. So I'm saying Pune to factory definitely can be done at a zero cost. Second part is, even I have a doubt that even the mid mile may be that way. The other way aspect is that when you look at the primary, you have to, yes, there will be some reverse logistics cost, but you have to also look at what is the kind of cost return. The idea really is to, you can't make it zero. I mean, I agree with that. But I definitely feel that if you marry the forward and reverse together, this is what we have done in many of our operations for different aspects. And we have actually been able to bring it down quite effectively. I don't know if it really answers, but I'm just giving you some direction on that.
No, sir, it definitely answers, because I myself believe that tech is the right answer for that. That my technology, my systems should tell that whatever track is going from A to B, it has the capacity, it has the material in B, which will it bring it back to A. So that is definitely the right answer.
And Akash, I'll tell you one thing, the simplest solution to this now sometimes is putting everybody onto one transport system and one transport organization. Half the time, what we try to do is we try to say there is a common objective and build different organizations. And वही problem चालू हो जाता है. So the idea is to not have so many organizations and have, the same TMS, same days, automatically the data will show.
Agreed,
it will
sir.
automatically schedule it back.
So just one more thing. So you believe that when we talk about sustainability and all these steps, so these are actually practical for practical for companies who have which are old, have some sustainable profits, they have that cash reserve, they have that capability to invest in the right tech, right resources, the costly resources, and not for some small scale companies
No. I would say the other way around. I am saying is, what is my core belief? My core belief is sustainability by design is a reduction resource. Okay. It is also, I also believe, and I've always pushed that, is that at the design stage, we have to make it viable on day one. Okay. And when I say viable, only point is the viability can be with a life cycle costing rather than a short-term cash flow. Okay, which is what Mr. Nag has also, explained further. The point is that, okay, once you do that, if it is a life cycle cost reduction, the small company, though even more than the large company, needs the cost reduction.
Agreed.
So that's what I'm saying. It's just a mindset issue. Everybody requires that.
It's a myth actually. Large company doesn't have cash. It's a myth.
In fact, if you see, some of the small startups have come up with such innovative shortcuts, which is what Mr. Nag was also again trying to refer in terms of the Indian innovation as a jugaad kind of thing. That is actually said, array, we were doing this as 5 steps, and suddenly a startup comes and does it in 2 steps. Agreed. What is that? That's actually efficiency.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
In fact, I feel smaller, nimble organizations are much more capable of doing these kind of innovations than larger. It's actually, my view is the reverse actually.
Sir, actually there are 2 companies. So one is the conventional companies which are there in the market for 30-40 years. They are still, they have a mindset to not go for this tech and thing. What you are saying, it is for the startups which are coming. So they are coming with...
No, I am saying it is for everybody. See, I am saying is sustainability, it's like breathing air. It cannot be for any one group. It is to be done for everybody, and everybody will, whoever doesn't will suffer in the long run.
Got it.
Chota, bada, everybody will have to do it.
Thank you, sir.
I could see 3 hands raised. So let's get to Mr. Aditya. You can please ask the question.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this enriching panel discussion. So my question to you is, so when we talk about sustainability, we talk about ESG parameter, okay? And what we see is that many companies they tend to focus a lot on the environment factor, reducing carbon and all, but not much is spoken about the governance factor. Okay, we see, so where I'm coming from is like, we see Mr. Musk tweeting and just making statements on Twitter, and that is how there's not much done to control the governance part. So how can we actually improve the governance of the companies?
Who will take this?
I actually didn't understand what exactly you're trying to focus on.
He's talking about why the governance is not taken care. Instead of governance, we are only taking care of carbon footprint. When we talk about sustainability, we are talking about carbon footprint reduction and natural resource reduction. But there are a lot of mass quitting and all that due to governance issue within the organization. So why sustainability is not talking about the governance issue? That's his question. Yes, I'm correct, Aditya.
Aditya, you're on mute.
Yeah, exactly.
See, for governance, already there is law in place. Let me start from there. So for governance, there is law in place. Now, we are all law-abiding organization. If you are working in law-abiding organization, the governance, but the governance main issue is who is operating the governance. It is again the people. It's people operating the governance. Is it you and me? We are operating the company as a strategy cannot instruct you that you should go for bad governance or good governance. It is from the HR policy making and their operational things are making the governance. And XLRI being the prominent institution, so they should teach you in such a fashion that you better get into a good governance in across India and beyond India, I would say. So you are famous for that. So governance, yes, there is a problem in governance, but that is nothing to do with sustainability. Sustainability never tells you about you do bad governance or good governance. It's an operational issue. Even if I give you a Mercedes car to a auto rickshaw driver, can he drive a Mercedes car? So we are sometimes trusting some incompetent fellow in some responsible position. So that is why the outcome is bad. So that is nothing to do with company strategy. If I am wrong, Mr. Neeraj Ambani or Pradeep ji, you can contribute if I am wrong anywhere.
No, so maybe just to add to your point, I mean, in India, we now have the BRSR report that will need to be submitted by organizations. So those will, from a legal standpoint or compliance standpoint, do some enforcement around the governance part. But the question is very valid. Usually, ESG or sustainability development, we usually talk about environment, climate, and also workplace betterment. But I think the governance part, I think, gets into the board of directors and stuff, and maybe with the new policy requirements in place, maybe that will get enough attention to.
So just to add a little bit is that, see, for me, what does the word governance mean? For me, first core is to figure out that do you have a clear-cut objectives? Do you have a roadmap made towards those objectives as an organization broken down with a work breakdown to each team, each person, each leader? If that is very clear-cut done in any organization, then governance is basically the framework to ensure that you are on track, not going off-road, you're not over-speeding, you're not under-speeding, you're not doing any reckless driving, etc., etc. I mean, governance is more just the mechanism or aina batana kind of, aspect of it. And this that gets formalized, that gets, because it's eventually become a process. Eventually, it's become a way in which you bring transparency, right? Whether it's transparency to governments, transparency to investors, customers, basically all stakeholders. So, in my mind, governance is a subject by itself, but more importantly, it is really. I would always focus on what the core is. The core is, do you have clear-cut objectives or do you have clear-cut roadmaps? And therefore, the governance frameworks or governance platforms, rather, can be used to analyze what you are doing and whether your processes, strategies are on the sustainable path. But and then check how they are. But if your original core is not, then governance by itself cannot do anything, because governance will do only whatever your objective has been stated. That's where I am.
So the next question is from Dheeraj.
Hello, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, so my question would be like, how can the government play a role in promoting the green supply chain? Like as you discussed, like we have some options like government providing some tax benefits on buying the EV, or even the government is giving some import duty cut on if you are buying importing lithium-ion battery. What are the other things that government can do in this and to promote the green supply chain?
I personally believe, if you ask me, the biggest initiative which the government has launched is the PM Gati Shakti. I think one cannot underestimate what the government is trying to do, because see, what has happened is that today we have been discussing in every supply chain or logistics or transport or warehousing forum all aspects of either land cost is high, either that the transport network capacity needs to be increased, or your running needs to increase to reduce your cost, etc., etc. The PM Gati Shakti program is worth focusing on for all stakeholders in the supply chain to really understand this is going to have a dramatic effect in terms of the overall efficiency as it gets implemented, and Gati Shakti is more of a platform which again everybody can use to identify properties, to ensure that your network design is aligned to what the overall network design is. It creates stakeholders which you can go to with your logistics issues, and then they can convert them into projects, etc., etc. So I think I'm of the same view that government, what I said earlier, government and policy making is there to facilitate. It is there to create, scale of businesses. It is there to ensure that the project planning of all infrastructure is being done. There is obviously the ULIP part of the Gati Shakti, which for paucity of time I won't cover right now. But I think we now need to leverage what we have from the government. And just to put a point in perspective, if you go to US history and you see what happened for the Work for Food program in the recession, they built the largest highway system which still is operating. And if they had not built that highway system, the way the distributed housing and distributed factories of America came up, and especially how they geared up to be the factory of the world in World War I, II, would have never happened. So we have exactly same time of history in making if we leverage this kind of initiative. And I think that itself is the core to many of the supply chain issues, and which can be solved. So I think let's try to leverage now what is already launched. And yes, I'm sure as industry and government have dialogues, more ideas will come up. But I think idea is always first to take what is available.
Just to add, I think government can build infrastructure. I think policies are one, yes, and as Mr. Ambani just mentioned, very hugely impactful policies are there. But building infrastructure is also a big role that the government can play, right? And you can see just building the highways just reduces the usage of fuel, right? Because now you're going at the optimum speed without breaking your journeys. Another initiative that the government put together was the FASTag, right? At the toll booths. I mean, just the hour-long queues and the idling time of vehicles has gone down to minutes now just because FASTag is there, right? So government can build a lot of infrastructure and support these initiatives in addition to the policy. So there are a lot of things the government can do in terms of building infrastructure, but I think the pace at which we have seen last few years, the such infrastructure being built has been amazing. So I'm sure next few years are going to be similar.
So we have a last question from Deepika.
Thank you, sir. Thank you everyone for conducting this enriching session. So I have one question. When we talk about sustainability, businesses transfer their unsustainable parts of supply chain to the underdeveloped countries. Now, considering the fact that economically this is beneficial for those countries, however, at a planet level, it is still unsustainable. How do you think that this practice could be avoided by the companies and they could focus on overall sustainability altogether?
Great question. And many companies have already started to look at that. Let's say the footwear manufacturing companies, right? They used to have earlier child labor in the poorer countries where the shoes were being manufactured. But now all that has come into come into the eyes of either the investors or customers. Right? They now know, are aware of it. And Mr. Amani so very well mentioned earlier that information is out there. Customers are much more aware than even few years back. Right? They know everything. So it's not like now that is a very, very common practice or will be a common practice in the future also. But it is changing significantly. All the large corporations, whether they're based in US or Europe, are having to submit these compliance reports, or even if by themselves they are getting onto the sustainability journey, they are reporting on all these elements. You know, the supply chain is not ending in their own country. The supply chain goes back to the supplier, to the supplier. So they are taking care of it, but industry as a whole needs to also follow that lead and take care of their whole supply chain rather than just look at their business or just their next level of suppliers.
To add Pradeep's this when you do the sustainability audit, there are 17 SDGs. We do cover this point where the input source and the output source. So this subscribing to unsustainable countries and all that is already taken care through rating system. So if you are really doing that kind of business, so your rating will go down. So it is always reflected. So slowly the system is in place which can take care of this also. So it's not like that. That is why it's not that this pandemic has reduced the inflow of Chinese product. It is not that Corona alone. It is because of their unsustainable practice from where the sourcing has been stopped. So the decoupling is already happening. Now, suppose if you are using a product like forest product, like paper pulp, when we procure paper from a manufacturer of a newsprint from imported manufacturer, it is always a certified forest. It's not a natural forest or something like that. We are not depleting the forest. So it is a sustainable forest which is contributing to making the newsprint through paper pulp, and that is how the rating is done. So it is already, that is why I commented in the initial stage, you don't get a good auditor who can audit all these things. With ESG is a new subject, so I would request all you guys, the budding leaders, must invest in your career to some extent. You study on this. There are certification programs through which you can enrich your career, and you can be a ESG certified auditor also, so that this our nation gets a good kind of talented pool into this business. There are really dearth of real talent into it. We are struggling a lot to get a good auditor who can understand this law, not by reading the books, but actually operationally how you can help the process. Because we don't have much time. Just a decade left to be sustainable. Otherwise, the future will be very difficult.
So one more thing to add is that, when you look at procurement, procurement can play a very, very big role in what I call vendor development. Okay, and what we have seen many examples of companies in India as well as abroad, which have actually, really focused on that. Because see, what happens is, again, it's more the immediate term vis-a-vis long term. If you say currently outsource to a tier 2, tier 3 vendor, which maybe, as we were just been discussing, further away, may not be finding practices. The point is that one has to cultivate vendors which actually have your same philosophy, which have this thing, and also work with them to give them scale. If you work consciously, you can systematically substitute good vendors, and better vendors over a period of time. And I think that's a very one has to do that in a conscious way in your procurement exercise. So, because and that's the only way, and I'm again linking it to the technology element. Those who are really So even when we are doing vendor assessment, you have to always look at it as which are those vendors which are actually futuristic in their whole mindset, in every element of it. And automatically you will be able to differentiate between the progressive vendors vis-a-vis the regressive vendors. And I think is that's a cycle. If you do automatically, you won't be. And my view is very clear. You cannot wait for learning that. You have to have what we just mentioned about those kind of vendor audits, and actually go under the skin to really figure that out, but systematically move to better quality. Don't be happy with the fact that you're getting a certain rate or a certain quality, but if you get pacified by that, okay, boss, we are in a good shape, that itself is the beginning of the end, that way. So we have to always think of it as who is actually investing in that future, and those vendors support, inculcate, even if you have to give a little initial margin more, do that, so that you create a culture of vendors actually investing into the future way of working.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, all the panelists. So on the behalf of XLRI, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Ambani, Mr. Nag, Mr. Jadhav for such a wonderful session. Now, may I have Manish to have a vote of thanks?
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you, sir. It was truly an insightful session, and we are very privileged to have all of you with us today. Thank you, Mr. Neeraj, Mr. Pradeep, Mr. Saibal, and Professor Abhishek for taking out your valuable time. Have a great day ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audience, please be with us. We have our next session scheduled at 6:15 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.